right, welcome everybody. It is 7:04 on Monday, March 18th, 2018. I'll call the meeting to order, and we'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll get started. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll start tonight with some announcements and board openings. We have one opening for the Board of Health, 2 openings for the Town Hall Building Committee, 4 openings for our new Capital Committee, and also do not forget, annual town meeting is April 6th at 9 a.m. in the Hamilton-Wenham Regional High School Auditorium. And now we have a section for public comment. If anybody wishes to come up and say anything that is not already on the agenda, you can do so now. And if at any point during the meeting you want to be heard, just come right up to the microphone and we'll recognize you. All right. Moving on to our consent agenda. Actually, we'll do some selectmen reports here.
Missing off the agenda, that's weird.
That's all right. Jeff, do you have any updates for us?
Yeah, just quickly, Town Hall Building Committee meeting is this Wednesday, 5 o'clock here at Town Hall. And they've been doing a lot of hard work. Tim, jump in if you have anything to add, but done a lot of good work and have gotten to the point now where it's really kind of the priority is to get out and get information out in front of people so they can see kind of conceptually what's being, you know, discussed and thought about and want input on type of thing. So I think that'll be one of the priority of Wednesday night's meeting. But it's going along well. The conceptual drawings are really, really fantastic. This committee has really done a really nice job, I'd say, at managing expectations of architects and such, where, you know, we started off with a design that was just so elaborate and extravagant that just didn't make any sense. So this committee has really emphasized the fact that we're on a tight budget here and we need to make the best use of the money as we possibly can. So my hat's off to them. They've done a really good job with that.
I'm glad it's gaining some momentum.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Allison.
I don't have anything at the moment. Hopefully someone will, I did hear there might be a 40B project up at Gordon Conwell. So maybe that will be in other reports this evening. And I don't know if we're going to discuss the new report that's going out from the finance department that I got today.
All right. Bill?
Yeah, so on the Hamilton Affordable Housing Trust, I think we finalized the language for the warrant on the quorum and the voting members. So
good.
They're going to vote on it. We voted on that, so I think it's just language that you were working on with Doris. So I think we're all set. On the thing that Allison just mentioned on the conceptual project, so there's a purchase and sale between a developer by the name of Peter Conant and Gordon Conwell for like those 18,
grab that mic, though.
Those 18 acres up on the hillside there. He gave a very conceptual proposal. Just wanted to get some discussion going early on. So there'll be more to come. I think he's going to come in front of the Board of Selectmen. He's going to meet with the neighbors, and it's very early on, very preliminary, but he just wants to get ahead of it. And it's going to be, his idea is to do single-family houses that would be sold. So that's the concept.
Very, very early in the process, then it sounds like.
Yes.
I actually think he's got a very preliminary meeting coming up with the planning board too.
Okay.
Tomorrow
Yes,
night.
it's on the it's on the planning board agenda for tomorrow night.
It's kind of a
Number
meet and
4
greet
on the
then.
agenda.
Right.
And then on the planning board, they're voting on and discussing the 3 warrant articles tomorrow. Signage, microcellular facilities is number. The second one, the third one is the inclusionary housing bylaw. There's also a meeting coming up for the
The housing part of the master
housing, which I
plan.
have that here too. Let me just read what date that is. That is in front of me. You have to come back to me.
Are they, with
They've
their
had- they
meeting
pushed-
tomorrow night, they're hoping to finalize language for town meeting for those?
For those three, they're gonna vote on those three warrant articles, but here it is, right here. I can't find the, but I'll come back to that. I think they pushed it off till April because of all the other activities going on, so there's a announcement for that housing update meeting.
Okay.
It's gonna be in April. And then for the library, after a very quick but exhaustive search, they have selected Kimberly Butler, who's an assistant director at Amesbury right now, to be the new library director. She's great. I got to meet her on a couple occasions. So pending further reference checks and contract negotiations, she has been selected out of 15 candidates to be the new library director. So
Great.
the process was very successful, inclusionary of both towns, Hamilton and Wenham, and I think we picked a good candidate. So looking
Great.
forward to getting her on board.
Great. All right, I don't have anything. The rec department's meeting tonight. They're discussing summer programs, getting the fields ready, et cetera.
I think it got canceled, actually.
Oh, yes, it did get canceled, that's right. I just saw that. Thank you for reminding me. So they'll be rescheduling that. Hopefully, if it'll be next Monday, I'll get the chance to go. That's really it for me.
I have a town manager report, but I'll try to keep it to the highlights and then clean up some of the language because I noticed some typos today. So before we get it online, we'll try and get it cleaned up. Town email update. The email migration is taking place as we speak. In fact, many of the email addresses will be migrated over this evening and into tomorrow. I wanted to take a minute to thank the people that were involved in helping us get this started very quickly. First, Selectwoman Jenkins, who got us our initial vendor and quote, kind of jump-started the process for us, which was helpful. Marissa and the FinCom, which I kind of identified and approved the funding to get it to happen pretty quickly. And Andy Wood, who put in a lot of his own time to help us not only, pick the company we decided to go with, but took a large portion of the process on himself to save us some money, both in terms of the cost of migration and in subscription costs in the future by eliminating some old email accounts and things that weren't being used. So that's come in under what we initially had expected, so I'm pretty happy with that. The new Open Space and Recreation Committee met for the first time last week. They'll be meeting with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council at an upcoming meeting sometime in the next 2 or 3 weeks and begin the process of completing. So that's an odd sentence, right? They obviously the Open Space and Rec plan had been started and stalled, so they will be picking that back up to complete it. The e-newsletter has launched, and we're still encouraging residents to try to go onto the website and sign up for that. It'll be more successful the more people we have sign up for it, so let us know. Please sign on and sign up for updates. The progress on the new sign for the Public Safety and Council on Aging, the proposed new electronic sign has received a positive site plan review from the Planning Board, and the next step will be for the proposal to go before the ZBA at their April meeting. There was not enough on the agenda in the March meeting for the ZBA to have a meeting, so I think we would have been the only thing had they pressed forward. So we'll hopefully get that taken care of in April. I wanted to provide a staffing update. We received the letter of retirement from our treasurer collector last week. So Cheryl Booth, after 20 years of dedicated service to the town, has announced that she will be retiring effective June 30th of this year. So the timing's good for us because we were already planning a reorg, so that it'll expand out a little bit of what we're trying to do in that in the finance offices, and we'll be talking about that more later this meeting. And on updating on the town manager goals, I did meet last week with the new patent director to go over the development of business plan. Kaylee's done a really good job in a short amount of time. We're going to meet again Wednesday morning to try to fill out that business plan and plug in some of the holes. And originally we were planning to have it ready for town meeting, but I think in talking with some folks, we want to try to help the community understand what's going on a little sooner. So once Kaylee and I have it in a good enough shape for public review, we'll try to have a meeting next week, at the earliest, potentially the week after, leading up to town meeting. But I want to have at least one public airing of our proposed business plan prior to town meeting, so that it won't be the first time people have to see it. So we'll
Great.
schedule a meeting, and I'll try to get HWCAM to cover that meeting as well, so it can be broadcast. No current news on our financial policies and stabilization funds. That's we agreed to let that stuff stay on hold until after the annual town meeting. The FY20 budget projection for capital investment now includes a cost associated with paving Chabaco Woods Road, and that will be on the town meeting warrant, or is on the town meeting warrant so far. Town hall renovations, Jeff covered. And to fill in the blank for Bill, the master plan housing profile document has been received and is under review. The second of 2 housing forms has been rescheduled to April 29th at the Hamilton Wenham Public Library, beginning at 7 p.m. It will include a wrap-up of the study. So,
When was that again? For?
April 29th.
I did find it, so it was on me.
I got to make sure I clean up my typos before I post this online. Sorry about that.
All right, anything else? That's good. All right, now we'll move on to our consent agenda. We have a handful of minutes here. Approved minutes from the Board of Selectmen regular meetings on February 4th and February 25th, 2019. The Accord Food Pantry requests permission to post a banner to advertise their annual food drive on Bay Road at the intersection with Asbury Street from May 1st until May 12th, 2019. And the North Shore Tour de Cure request for permission to host their annual cycling, walking, and running fundraising event benefiting the American Diabetes Association on May 19th. And in your packet, the route and insurance information is attached.
So moved.
Any second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great.
I abstain only because I wasn't present for February 4th.
Okay, so we'll note that. On to the agenda. We're going to switch up the agenda just a little bit tonight. We want to start with the application for road races, or do you want to do that? All right, we're going to take our last item first. We have on the agenda application for road races, walks, or block parties of first reading.
Not really a reading so much as just kind of an
Kind of an
unveiling. for
update
you
on the
guys to
form,
consider.
really.
Yeah, this was an effort undertaken, initiated by Annabella in my office and Lieutenant James to kind of simplify the process and make sure we have a little bit more defined process for having some of these things come before the board and be approved properly. So
Is that in our
they
package?
work together. It should be in your packet. And I know Annabella was working on it with Lieutenant James, as I said, and she wanted to make sure you all got a look at it to approve it. I think the idea was for you to see it tonight, offer any comments, and then have you vote to accept it as a regular
This
part
is
of our
form
process.
right here.
Yep.
Yeah. And if you have any comments, let us know. A lot of the grunt work, I think, was done by Lieutenant James. He's often the one that organizes this stuff in the police department, so he was cognizant of what it was the police department needs to sign off on. And they developed that form together. So.
And do we have, do we have a current form or anything? Or is this I guess I'm trying to read and pay attention at the
So
same
I
time.
think
It
that
wasn't working
there's
too
a
well.
form that was available in the police, no? Chief is shaking his head.
This
I
is-
thought there was
this is
some kind
all
of a form
fresh
that was
then?
It's all fresh, okay.
Okay,
What would happen, Mr. Chairman, is sometimes they come to the police department.
sorry, thanks, Chief,
No problem.
for the people at home.
Sometimes he would come to the police department, sometimes he'd go to Annabella, sometimes he'd come here, and someone didn't know where he was supposed to go, so we're actually trying to streamline the process so they can fill out the form, they get the proper signatures, and it's kind of a one-stop shop instead of sending people all over town.
And Donna, you read the general release and indemnity agreement on here?
Would you like to?
It's,
Yeah, thanks.
I think that was consistent with what's normally been asked for folks to provide when they've asked for permission to do certain types of events. That was the genesis of that statement, so. That would be usable for a number of different types of events that people wanted to use it for.
And is there a fee structure for this, or is it no fee?
I don't think we charge fees for any of the things that we're looking to use this form for, so.
Okay, so it's, yeah, so it's,
a lot of times the runs and races are nonprofit organizations just looking to use the public way to be able to have their event. So this is more just kind of making sure we're covered and that everybody knows that it's going on.
Can you just pass it down to Joe? There's just some simple typos.
And she's marking it up too.
Yeah.
And,
That's why we have first readings.
thank you. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Baby mine as well.
Do we have any kind of policy when somebody comes to apply for this in the future as far as the time before the event that they would need to have this in by? You know, Chief?
We don't as of
What's our practice?
today.
Do we have any?
We don't have a policy in place. Most of these people are repeats that come
Right.
every year.
An annual road race or
Exactly.
something like that?
Whether it was Gabe's run, everyone knows that we like to get about 4 weeks that they have to come before the board, they have to go to the police department, they have to see Annabella. So we don't technically have a time frame. But in all honesty, if we said 4 weeks and they came in 3 weeks, we'd still try to push it through. But in general, we tell them we like to have at least 4 weeks in advance.
Okay.
Yeah, it's,
Maybe-
I'd be hesitant to suggest that we have a hard and fast, 4 weeks or something, because if it's a newer event, somebody's trying to pull something together for the first year, they might not know that they need something
might
like
not
this,
need- yeah,
and
right.
so they'll come in maybe, with 2 weeks to go, and if we have an available meeting, we're trying to cooperate with them.
But it's at
we're
least 3
trying to push
weeks
it.
because of the meeting scheduling, so I probably would maybe put that in the application because we meet every other week, so at least it gives them a heads up when they pick up the application that.
Yeah, just because a lot of times when we're
2
doing
meetings a
some,
month, so.
especially if it's a walk or road race or something, they usually want to post a sign,
Yeah.
right? So, maybe they could be kind of in tandem.
So I can, we'll include some language in the bottom, suggest 4 weeks' notice to the Board of Selectmen to acquire approval.
Any other comments? Jeff, anything you see?
No, it's good, no.
Fairly
it
straightforward.
Makes sense. I remember one year, a few years ago, it seemed like we had to have special last-minute meetings to approve some of these
Yeah.
events, but it's been smooth for the last couple of years, so.
All right. Do we need to do anything other than just suggest these
No, I'll
edits?
suggest the edits, I'll get it to Annabella, we'll clean it up, and we'll have it ready for you to look at again on the next meeting.
Perfect.
On April 1st. So that was a quick one.
All right, and then let's skip back to the third item on our list, the school resource officer agreement with the Hamilton Wenham School District in a vote. You should have in your packets and also emailed to you the IMA in the MOU for the resource officer. Just before the meeting, I noticed with Joe that some of the red line things were still in the version that you probably have in your packet, so Joe and I just went through and
The document I have online is
cleaned it up. So if there's something that you see in it that you think is a typo, shout it out. Maybe we missed it, but there's a couple little things with the way the document was being tracked that didn't get edited out. But Jeff Sands at the school committee end, or the school administration end, I should say, is looked it over. Don has had a piece in it. Joe and I both had a piece in it. Chief Stevens is involved in it. We think we've got a good document. It's just kind of looking it over one last time and then voting to approve the agreement.
Yeah, so the origination of the document started with recommendation and commentary from the school department that if we had 2 documents like this, that they'd probably be able to execute them. Donna initiated the drafting of the first IMA and MOU documents, sat down with Chief Stevens, made several edits and amendments to it. We sent it to the school department. Unfortunately, it was during the school vacation week, so they did not respond right away. When they did respond, Jeff Sands had several requests for edits that Donna reviewed for us last week, and we basically accepted all of the school department's requests for edits. So what you saw with the strikeouts and things was that the document, when it was edited, and the school side wasn't edited and track changes. So we had to manually go back and remove some of those things that were done. And as Sean said,
Like if you're looking at the IMA on the first page at the bottom where it says hours, you can see a couple of strikeouts in there. You see where I'm talking about,
Yeah.
Allison? So Joe and I, just before the meeting, just sat down and got rid of those strikeouts and a few other, if you look down the next kind of paragraph there, it starts out with the SRO may be on site on such other days, and then there's that little section symbol before superintendent. We took out a handful of those that are in the document as well.
I have both documents, I can open them up here, and if you have anything else that you think that I need to...
The crosses are correct, but they should just be deleted, is what you're saying.
Right, yeah, and that's why I've gone in and
Yeah.
done a lot of those, but if you want to have a question about a specific one, let me know, I can make sure of it, and we'll...
I'm fine with it because Donna reviewed it, but my only question was, I think with the MOU, I was reading that the cost would be determined by the IMA.
Yeah, the documents refer back and forth to each other. Donna, you want to explain that so that I don't mess it up?
So is it, well, is there any bill coming to the schools for the town? I understand Town of Hamilton's going to pay for it, that all of it's logical to me, except it, I can't find it right now, but it's saying, to me, the MOU said that the school would bill the town based upon the IMA. So I'm just wondering, is there actually going to be dollar values in the school budget for this position, or does it fall under the, it should be in the to me, it should be in the Hamilton Police Department's budget.
And it is in our budget now.
Okay.
And it doesn't not have to be in the school department's budget. That's what we've made clear to them, so, but...
It will not be in their budget to bill us. Okay.
The
That's what I was
cost,
double checking.
right, the cost is set forth in Section 7 of the IMA.
Yep.
Top of page
So that
3.
talks about how in our first year, we expect the money to be paid for, the money to come from the Green Meadows Host Community Agreement.
Yep.
I think the hope is that that will be the case for
Yeah.
the foreseeable future. But if it isn't, then we're going to need to renegotiate terms. And I had thought that maybe we could do something like what we do for the, is it the IMA that we do with the schools for the grounds? The
Yeah.
grounds where they have, it's our employee, it's under our budget, but they have to reimburse us. So we would work out something like that. But that is, at the moment, we're intending that the money's going to come from the HCA.
That's perfect. But so was the school budget ever amended to remove the
That is a
SRO that they
question
put
I
in?
don't know the answer to.
I don't want to,
We've certainly
Prove
asked
it
them
in
to...
both
We've certainly
budgets.
asked them to do that.
Yeah,
so.
we've asked them to do it for sure.
Yeah, last I had heard, they had $1 in their budget for it, but then I've since heard that may not be the case.
yeah, the only thing I've seen is, I think, 73,000 that's been in their budget for it. So I just want to make sure we're capturing it and asking people to vote for it.
In one spot, right?
Appropriately, yeah.
Appropriately.
Right, one spot.
Just for your point there, Allison, I'll reach out to Jeff tomorrow and see where that stands, whether it was the $1 or still the 73, like you said, like it was last time. I'll write that down.
Because that will go into our warrant that we send out to everyone.
School
Well,
budget with the, yes, with the, not
With the
the,
73
it can't be at
grand
both
in-
budgets, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it says on top of that, when you continue reading that section 7, it says, on the December 1st of each year, the Hamilton Town Manager shall provide the superintendent with an estimate of the cost to employ the SRO and how much Hamilton tends to be responsible for. It could be 0, is what you're saying. The idea is that it's 0, but you're giving yourself an out in case it is something. Is that what the idea of that clause? Okay.
Yeah, well, generally, what it's saying is that normally I'd say it's going to cost us $75,000 to employ the SRO. We intend to take responsibility for
All of it. Gotcha. Okay. But it gives you an out if
So
you
it gives
don't.
us an out. If there's something happens, we
Okay.
can always go to the schools and work it out that way. But
So
that
if-
gives it time for them to add it into
And the
their
school,
budget
and the
process.
school agreed to that clause, so.
Yeah, they absolutely did.
So the warrant is going out to the printers when?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. So then can we ask the school, are they going to make a motion on the floor if it's not $1 in their budget? If it is,
We could add, right.
Reduce it.
We
They
could
should be
reduce
making
it.
a
They should
motion
take the
to
motion
reduce it.
At that point.
Yeah, I'll do that.
They're not going to be able to do that unless the committee has approved a lower budget. We are asked at town meeting to vote on our appropriated share of the approved budget.
Right.
So they can't just make a motion. If somebody makes a motion to lower our apportioned share by 1/3 of what our apportioned share is, and that's what's approved, then they're going to have a shortfall and their budget will fail. Now, what can happen between now and then is their treasurer can recertify the amount that we are supposed to be apportioning, and if they do that, then we can vote and they won't have a failed budget.
Ask Jeff to make sure that he
But they need to
recertifies.
do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So there's a vehicle.
Thank you, Donna.
Let's talk first thing in the morning about that then.
Yep.
Okay.
So what happens if we don't get money proceeds from the host community agreement? We're still responsible?
We would be, but we actually, before we even went down this road, we confirmed again with Bob Patton. I think he even came to your meeting here and said that they were fully intending to pay the full, they've already given us the first $10,000 when they apply for the building permits, which will
Are
be...
you talking down the road if something falls out?
No, I'm talking
with
about
Green Meadow
now
this
and
first
down the
year?
road. I know this whole program is under, Donna, I don't know if you know anything about, there are lawsuits that are opposed to this whole funding mechanism, the host community agreement with medical marijuana farms. So, I mean, nothing's definite. And this, to me, I don't have a problem at all with a resource officer. We all agree. Our chief says it, our superintendent says it. But I have a hard time with the funding mechanism. I believe the school should be funding them, and I think my reasoning behind that is we're going to be responsible for that full cost when it should be allocated just like any other school-related costs. I understand the quagmire we have with how the host community agreement is and the proceeds and how they can and can't be used. But to me, this just makes us liable for that cost out of our own taxpayer money.
So I think the way they drafted it was if, say Patton Homestead, say the Green Meadow Farms doesn't move forward with it, this is written then that we can then renegotiate.
Yeah.
So right now, they've written it with the intent that we will get the proceeds, but it is written that if that doesn't come to fruition, we can renegotiate it.
Where's that, do you know?
Section 7? Section 7.
It's in
But
7, right?
Donna can speak to it, but
It just says May, Section 7, shall be exclusive responsibility of Hamilton. It is anticipated that the cost borne by Hamilton will be paid out of the proceeds of the host community agreement between Hamilton and Green Meadows Farms.
Yep. And then if you continue on there, it says an estimate of the cost to employ the SRO for ensuring fiscal year A and B, how much of these costs Hamilton intends to take responsibility for under this agreement.
So each year on December 1st, I have to let the school department know. What you basically be committing yourself to right now is at least the first year.
Right.
But as of December 1st, if something were right down with the HCA and with the whole plan for the medical marijuana grow facility, and on December 1st, I'd be able to tell the superintendent, well, that thing, our funding mechanism fell through, so we're going to need you to take up the cost of that.
But the town will be responsible for the first year for this position, regardless of what happens with Green Meadow or not. That's the problem I have.
Yeah, so
First year.
under this agreement, Hamilton is holding itself liable for FY20 for the costs of the SRO.
Got it.
Yeah. What's been going on, I'm not aware of any lawsuits on it. What's going on at the state level is the Cannabis Control Commission and some other departments are concerned that municipalities have really been overcharging these facilities through host community agreements and through application fees and through all the rest of it. So they're trying to put a cap on what communities can get. So we will cross that bridge if it comes to it. At the moment, we think that our agreement is our HCA agreement with Green Meadows is legal, and the fees we charge are reasonable, and we'll see what happens. But yes, for FY20, you're right.
All right, if you notice any other typos or have any other questions, please shout them out.
So are we reviewing both documents?
Both of them, yeah.
Okay.
I read them previously, and I'm okay with them as long as Donna reviews them. Are you looking for a vote tonight, or are you looking for us to review them for the first time tonight and then vote them at a future meeting, or what's the intent?
I would prefer a vote tonight, but
We do meet
I
again
read them the
April
other night. I'm okay with them, and I mean, Donna's reviewed them, so I'm,
Chief Stevens is fine with them. He hasn't stepped up, so I'm assuming he's seen the agreements and.
I see him nodding his head back there.
So myself and town council met, and we spent quite amount of time going over them, resubmitting them, calling back and forth. I'm very comfortable with the way they're written, and I understand Jeff's concerns, but I'm very comfortable with the way both of these are written.
I'm prepared to vote tonight if we choose to vote, so.
And just to Allison's point at a previous meeting, we had a concern about Hamilton officers in Bucher School. What you'll notice, the agreement is just for the Hamilton schools. So
Yes.
it's strictly a Hamilton officer in the Hamilton schools, so there'd be no officer in Bucher. They have an officer in Bucher that they're calling a school liaison officer that they'll continue to do at Bucher. So that school also has an SRO and just another,
okay.
basically, another form of officer. Yeah.
So then I make a motion that the Hamilton Board of Selectmen accept the MOU and IMA regarding the school resource officer as presented this evening.
Second that.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's one of those things I remember talking to somebody about, talking about the IMA, MOU, SRO, and it was a lot of
Yeah.
a lot of abbreviations.
A lot of acronyms.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jeff, you abstained?
Yeah, no, unfortunately, I have to oppose, I'm sorry, just again, simply because of the funding piece.
Understood.
All right, so 3 yes, Jeff opposed, all right. And then let's move on to our annual town meeting preparation with town moderator Jeff Mealich. We'll kind of bring Jeff up, talk about any of the details of the meeting. I've seen online that the National Honor Society is going to do childcare. They do their Kids Town meeting for both Wenham and Hamilton kids. If you haven't signed up and you've got or need childcare, you can go on the Hamilton Wenham Facebook page and sign up for that.
Can I ask you a quick question about that?
Sure.
Does that mean then that we don't need an assistant town moderator in the cafeteria? We'll just have the Honor Society in there to take care of kids?
That would be great.
I think that makes sense.
That
Everybody
is a
agree?
great question. Let me reach out to them and see where they're doing all of it.
I think they're planning to do it at the rec.
I think it's at the rec center,
It is at the rec
Oh, at the-
center.
right?
Yeah. They'll be keeping the kids at the rec center.
The kids will be
so
at the rec center, so
People
they
will
won't be
drop
at
their
town
kids
meeting.
off at
Yeah.
rec center and then go to town meeting, so, again, people should be able to be in the auditorium. There's no reason for them to bring their kids to the cafeteria.
Unless you max out
Right, because
of the number of children they can take, which I don't foresee happening, but that's the only,
yeah, usually the only kind of 2 catches in that whole thing are town meeting runs long, which it typically does, and you've got coverage 9 to noon, and then Wenham's town meeting starts, and then you've got the Wenham kids there. But last year, there was a handful of Hamilton kids that they ended up staying longer. The parents came in, checked back, and then went back to town meeting. So it all depends on the parent situation, but they're at the rec center this year.
Well, one potential problem with shutting down the cafeteria is that if people show up and they don't know about the rec center, and they've got their kids in tow, then they have to go all the way to the rec center, or come all the way back, and so.
Well, the rec center is a pre-signed up event, so
Oh,
they
yes.
know how many kids they have, so how many students they have to cover.
So they
So
might
they
not,
can't just go and drop the kids
so
off.
people could show up at town meeting expecting there to be an overflow room for them to be in with an assistant town moderator, and then, okay, so it looks like, I mean, it slows the whole
problematic.
thing down. I mean, I know that there's arguments on both sides.
So
I've kept it in the past, so.
I have a question, which, Donna, I think you're going to have to answer, or Jeff. Could we put something on the town warrant that we mail out right on the cover where the address is? You know, childcare sign up is here, or will be at the rec center, and we're asking if we can have all residents please come to the auditorium, and not, I don't know how to word it, but word it kindly, that we want you to come, we want you to participate, we've offered this, but can you please come? We're going to try not to have an overflow room.
Yeah,
We're
I
putting them on
agree.
notice.
Right.
I think either, I'm
I
just,
mean, I think the only problem you'd run into, I mean, if you had a nursing mother, something like that, that they can't drop the kid off at the rec center within, I don't know how, I think previously, and I don't know about this year, but there's been an age, if you're younger than X years old, they can't watch you at the rec center. I can't remember what the cutoff was. Like, you couldn't drop off your 6-month-old. So there was that. So people with kids under 1 year old would have to be in that overflow room, probably.
I think you either have it or you don't.
Excuse me.
And I think if you're not going to have it, you should put it on the warrant in the front.
I agree with, I think what Allison, I think what you're saying is, we're offering babysitting, can't get any better than that, and it's free.
It's not
So there's-
free.
It's not free? Sorry.
No, it's not
Sorry.
free.
Not free.
Okay, we're offering babysitting. High-quality babysitting.
Quality discounted.
Great
babysitting.
value.
Lots of activities. Lots of activities for the kids.
So, we don't need both, and it really does. I mean, the amount of time that it takes is exorbitant. I mean, I bet you our meetings will be 2/3 the length that they,
No,
it's a lot.
it isn't, because I've timed it, but it feels that way.
It feels that way.
It just feels that way, because you're waiting, and yeah, but I don't like it. I've done it just because so many people, well, some people ask for it, not a lot of people, but some people vociferously ask for it, and I don't know. I'm guided by your thoughts, really.
It's tough because, like you said, you have to have the offer of it, really. If you want everyone that can't come to town meeting to come to town meeting.
Right.
And you don't want to exclude anybody because they've got kids. It's tough.
Well, kids aren't excluded either from the auditorium.
No.
But I just
true.
think you just put something in the warrant that explains what's happening and
available.
and ask people. We're still, if you have people come and say, no, I want to sit, fine, we'll open it up and you can sit there.
Well, the thing is that before the meeting starts,
Right.
You
I have to go to Bill Bowler,
Right.
get down on my knees and beg him to do it. And then he agrees, and then he's back there, and people come and go, and, some people just go out there for a break to stretch their legs, quite honestly.
Right.
There aren't a lot of kids back there when I've been
Right.
back there. So I think you either have it in the beginning or you don't. Bill's agreed to do it again this year. We could certainly kick the can down the road and let Bill deal with it at the next town meeting, and I won't have to deal with making any decision. I mean, I think I'd be inclined, I'm concerned that there's not enough time for people to understand that if they go there, they won't have that room.
Right.
And I don't wanna see that
That's my
happen.
hesitation to not do it.
So-
Way in the
I
past.
think if you do it this year, but talk about it at town meeting.
But talk about it
For
at the
next year.
special in the fall.
Yeah, right.
But I do think, for the people who need it, I like to see them involved in town government. It doesn't really actually slow things down, although it does seem kind of torturous.
Right.
It gives me some good exercise, but whatever.
So let's leave it, have the overflow for the kids. And then, do we want it, to Allison's suggestion, put that there's childcare available through the Honor Society?
I can do that. I can add that.
And if we just go on, we can just grab the information from their
Yep.
their link. Any other things, Jeff, that you foresee, or town meeting? It seems like it's a fairly robust warrant, but there doesn't seem to be anything that's ultimately too controversial. In consent, maybe we can talk consent agenda items at some point.
Yeah, I'd be interested in what you guys recommend for that. I've been through this. I got a copy of it, about a week and a half ago or so. I don't think there's anything that unique or anything that's coming up. But there are a lot of issues on it, a lot of articles.
I'm trying to think of the best way to kind of go through it. Do you want to maybe just go through it and then just kind of walk through it?
One thing that I need to know, and I don't have the script yet, but I need to know who is speaking on for each of these. There's no citizens petitions that I'm aware of, so we don't have to worry about that. But I'm going to need to know, and I always need to know this, and Don will help me, what the vote needs to be, majority, 2/3 or whatever.
Right.
And then who's going to be speaking on it. So, have you guys determined who's speaking on your articles?
We haven't yet.
Okay. When are you going to do that?
Right now.
Oh, okay. All right. Works for me.
And then, from like a year ago, we talked, one of the lessons where we talked about order. We haven't really talked
Right.
about that at all. But there's not, I don't think there's, once again, you can't guess, but I don't think there's a lot on here that's gonna, there's nothing that's gonna create long conversation.
Not
We
that I
talked
can
about
think
order.
of.
Does it make anything to move anything up earlier when there's more people there?
Right, and we had kind of discussed that a bit about the order of stuff, and I think we kind of decided to leave it as it was for the most part.
I don't see anything in here that's that divisive that needs to be changed, but I wanted to get everybody's opinion on that.
Is everybody fine with the order of everything?
Yeah.
Yep.
Sure.
Let's just run right through it. And there was a couple things that we just need to discuss a little bit with one of the summaries in particular that I can think of. And then was there something you sent me about another change in one of the summaries?
We got Bill's summaries into the document
Oh, then
late
maybe that was
today.
it.
We got Bill's summaries. Bill had sent along summaries, and for some reason, they hadn't made it in to version 7, so there's now a version 8 that includes, and I gave you 3 pages that include Bill's summaries.
Yeah, that's it.
Bill's summaries for the 3 planning board articles and the Affordable Housing Trust article. Those, the Affordable Housing Trust article is set to go for all intents and purposes. The planning board won't be making determinations on their wording of their articles and stuff until tomorrow night, so we presented in the warrant the latest language. We can update the appendices prior to town meeting if the language changes, and Bill does have summaries in the warrant for them, but you don't have a recommendation because you haven't seen the final article yet, so we currently saying in the planning board articles that the Board of Selectmen will make a recommendation on the town meeting floor for the planning board articles.
And I saw an email today, but I didn't get a chance to really look into it, that Phil Stearns had sent, and was that FinCom's?
FinCom's book of recommendations.
And then was there another thing about any FinCom members presenting articles as well?
He offered, I believe, I don't want to speak for Phil, he's here, thank you for joining us. If you want to, he offered that his committee's appointed liaisons would be willing to speak to whatever articles I think is.
Right, so what I wanted to do is give Jeff a heads up as to who's been assigned for each of these articles. We wrote this report, we're calling it a report, I don't know what you want to call it, that gives our description of how we feel about the article and also explains why we voted the way we voted in areas where that's not obvious. And what I wanted to do is give Jeff a heads up as to who was responsible for which one. If you want to introduce articles, that's fine. I believe, and we will be discussing this Wednesday, there will be a couple of articles where FinCom members would like to at least make comment if they're not the ones introducing it.
Okay. All right, so let's just walk through it, right? All right, so start right at the beginning. 1-1 election of officers and reports, and then we can talk about consent motion.
Are you doing a report? I assume you are. Okay. Phil, is someone from your Yeah, I will. Okay.
I'm supposed to do it.
Are you doing the, I take it you're doing the one, Sean?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay.
You're up. Okay. Election of officers. Anybody want to make that motion? Or, no, I'm sorry. I always forget on this one. It's,
Yeah, so
I
this
can
one
speak to
isn't
it.
by motion. Jeff just reads off.
Jeff just
says
reads it,
it's-
right? Yeah, that's right. So Jeff. All right, and then consent motion. We had made some suggestions at our last meeting. Do you remember what they were? I'll have to find my notes.
I think you had bills of a prior year was one, right?
Yeah.
Compensation classification table.
Yeah, prior year bills. Compensation classification table.
I don't think we voted on that
Or no, we
one
didn't do
yet.
that one.
Did you
No.
do that one? Oh, I'm sorry.
Possibly the annual financial actions, 2.7.
Right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
2.7.
Was that it? Did we just have a couple? I thought we had one
I
more.
thought there were three, and I,
I think there are, I don't know, I think there's the ones we could consider. I mean, the
Grant
revolving fund,
appropriations?
2.9 and 2.11.
What was the first one?
The first one was the,
The prior year bills,
yeah, 2-1.
2-1.
And then 2-7.
Yep.
I mean, maybe the numbers are too big to feel like that's a too big consent thing, but to me, it seems like things that are maybe not be controversial, we haven't heard any criticism of, anything we can do to move the meeting quickly. Not to,
John, on the annual budget for revolving funds, what's the vote requirement?
Just majority.
Just majority?
But remember, when you added 2-1, you're going to need unanimous because 2-1 requires 4/5. So, doesn't matter for the others. That's going to be the highest.
but there's nothing else that needs 2/3 that we're talking about, 2-11 or 2.9.
No.
All right.
Did we think about 2-15, the grant appropriations one?
Yeah, I think that it was one. That's true.
Which one is that?
2-15?
Oh, 215.
So we're showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 articles?
Yeah, I've got 7, 9, 15. What am I missing? I got 4. What's the fifth?
2-1,
2-15 grant appropriations?
7,
Yeah.
9,
I got
11.
2-11, the open
11.
trust fund? Is there a reason you didn't want to include 2-2?
We can include it. There's typically a hold on it.
The budget.
All depends on who's, I would say historically, there's usually a, would you say there's a hold on that sometimes, on the compensation table? It all depends, right?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I don't remember.
We could put it in there. Someone can always put a
Yeah.
hold on it.
Hold on, I might as well put them together, lump them in. The
What do you
hold
think,
takes
Allison?
3 seconds, but
Yeah.
to vote it separately takes 5-10 minutes, so it's worth wasting the 3 seconds.
I'm okay with that. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
All right. Allison, you okay with that? All right, so we'll add
And it's- I was just
2-2.
looking, the FinCom has favorable action on everything except for 2, so that sort of helps our,
Right.
Yeah, favorable action except for what?
except for 2 items.
Oh, but none of the 6
None of
we're
the
talking
ones
about
you-
here.
no,
Right,
exactly,
okay.
everything is
Yeah,
favorable.
so that, they're all things that FinCom
Yeah.
recommends, that you recommend, that
Right.
make
Right.
sense.
Right.
to move forward. If there's a hold, you pull it off and
You do it anyways.
just later.
Later.
I almost wonder if the 5-1, we got to explain a little bit, but it's such a simple item, the OPEB trust fund. Do you want to?
It's up to you. We're going to have to explain it one way. We may have to explain it one way. or another.
Might
I
be
wouldn't
good for a
include
quick,
that, yeah.
yeah.
I wouldn't consent
Yeah,
that.
no,
Okay.
just because we
And
got
it's also, the school committee's first time there
right.
doing one for the schools
Yeah.
too, so maybe
No,
it's
that's a
good
good
for us
point.
to reinforce
Yeah.
what we're doing.
Good job.
All right.
Good point.
So that's probably it, right, for consent that we can think of?
Yeah.
7 articles?
And is 6-1 coming off?
6-1's coming off, correct, Phil? You guys had,
We're okay with that, but it's your decision.
okay.
You have to vote that tonight if you want to
Yeah.
take it off.
All right, so
What's off?
let's
Is
go over.
6-1 off? You just take off?
They haven't voted for it
We
yet.
haven't
but
voted it off yet, but it's most likely going to come
It
off.
looks like it's leaning that way.
It's leaning that way. All right, so just so we're all on the same page, the articles for consent motion, we have 2-1,
2-2.
2-2, 2-7,
Dash 7.
2-9, revolving funds, and
211
2-11.
215.
and 215.
Oh, yeah, and 2-15.
6.
All right, even though those are in consent and hopefully they all go through, does anybody want to volunteer to speak to any of those if they're held?
Well, I think because they're financial, is it the finance?
We'll let the finance committee do it.
FinCom, do you want to speak to any of those?
If
Have
they
you
don't.
already assigned someone to speak to any of these if they're held? That's what I was thinking, because they're financial.
So you got, if you're fine with,
We allocated
that's okay, come on up.
So in the process of writing the report, we allocated each of the articles to a person who's usually their liaison assignment or a particular interest. And that person will be prepared to speak to any article if you'd like.
That's all the
So-
2s, 2-1 through 2-20?
It's every article in the
They did
warrant.
every
but-
article.
the whole
But the
warrant.
finance
So-
ones would obviously be our strength, yes.
So do you quickly want to tell us who 2-1 is, 2-2 is? So then Donna can write the motion accordingly? And so if they're held, then we
I
know?
sent an email to
we
Jeff
have
with
it.
the
Yeah,
Let me
list.
see if I can
You already
pull it up.
have it, then that's fine.
I'm just
I don't
trying to
have it
find it
in my
really quick
head.
here.
I could
That's
probably
okay.
guess 90% of them, but I might get one wrong.
No, you're perfect, as long as Jeff has it and Donna has it, so they know how to write the motions.
I don't have it yet, I'll get them from Jeff.
What I need to know from Phil, that we can talk later this week, is, I mean, for some motions, the Board of Selectmen may make the motion, and then you guys may want to stand up and say something about it.
Correct.
As opposed to you stand up and make the motion, and someone else might discuss it. So the question is, do you want to be a primary on making the motion? And then also, do you want to be a secondary in speaking to any of these?
Well, we are certainly prepared to make the motion for any financial article, and we will discuss on our meeting Wednesday which articles we actually have comments on and want to speak to.
Good.
So I'll let you know.
Okay.
On that note, if you're going to create a slide, one of the slides do, for a planning board,
Jeff?
if I can have slides for some of their things, maybe not. When is that PowerPoint need to be in?
I missed everything you said. I'm sorry.
PowerPoint, when is the PowerPoint slides? If you're creating a slide for one of these, when does that go together? When's the deadline to get that into?
He's talking about the planning board
Oh,
articles.
the planning board?
Yeah.
Soon.
Yesterday.
As I understand it, they're still working on it, so,
Yeah.
you know.
All right, but I just need a date for the slides
As soon as possible, right?
this week.
Yeah, you know, I've never taken a really heavy hand on a lot of things, because I understand that people do this for free. They volunteer their time and they get it in. And quite honestly, if it comes in and the the town people can technically get it on the screen on a Thursday, it really doesn't matter if it came on Wednesday or the preceding Sunday. It just doesn't, you know, so.
Right. So, will you talk to Patrick and powers that be there in the planning board to get that together?
Yes.
Can I just real quick for Allison? I found Phil's letter, and just for everybody's edification, 2-1 was Nick Tennyson. 2-2 was Darcy Dale. 2-7 was Darcy Dale. 2-9 was John Prulich. 2-11 is David Wanger. And 2-15 is Darcy. So Phil let himself off the hook. None of the items in the consent agenda he has to speak to.
That works for me. So may I ask, while Phil is here, can we determine now as a board if we wish to, the list that Phil provided to Jeff and to Joe, whoever you provided for those, just, we can say, yes, they can make the motions. We just
If they come out of
knock those
consent,
off.
Yeah.
Why don't we just do that? So we,
The whole list?
Well, I have a whole list for all
You
the
don't have-
articles. You're talking about...
just financials right off the
articles right off the
bat.
bat.
Just
We can-
give them to whoever FinCom
I'll make sure
has
Jeff has the
figured
list.
it out
Jeff and
to
I
do
can
them.
confer and make sure Donna has the list as well. And
Yeah,
the
it's
finance
just a
line.
list showing if someone's going to speak from FinCom, this is who it will be. So my suggestion is you go through these one at a time and decide if you guys want to make the motion. If you don't, Phil's here, he can say, okay, we'll do it, in which case I'll transfer the name from his list onto this.
All right.
The only one I'm sorry, and I take that back, that I think you may not be able to do that is 2-2, because FinCom made their vote is no action, so then I think they
Right.
can't make the motion, if I remember correctly.
That's true, they voted.
212, patent.
Oh, 212.
Patent homestead.
Correct.
I thought you were saying 2-2.
So I think if you voted to take no action, then all of your board, then you can't make the motion. Yeah, so we have to vote someone to make the motion tonight, or choose someone to make the
Right.
motion for patent.
It'd be like a Mark Johnson or a...
And Allison, right now in the warrant, at least my version, says they voted to make no recommendation, not that they voted to take no action.
You're correct. I'm using the wrong language. I
to make
used the
a
wrong
recommendation.
language. You are correct.
Gotcha.
I incidentally, on that item, I'm planning to make a presentation if the moderator will let me. It's part of my goals as a town manager this year, so I figured I should take responsibility for it and explain ourselves.
Yeah, no, so I think that's perfect, so that's, we would use everyone that you chose through the FinCom, except for 2-12, we have to name someone else.
Right, so FinCom for all of the 2- whatever articles.
Community preservation? Would that be somebody from the CP?
Well, let's just start
Put on
right
the
back
list.
from the top here. So, 2,
2-3?
Yeah.
Let's start with 2-1.
Start with
Article 2-1, we have
How about let's start with 1-3.
2-1 and 2-2 are.
Let's start with 1-3. Who's going to make the motion on 1-3, the consent motion?
I'll make it.
Okay.
All right. Okay, and then 2-1 will be in the consent. If it gets a hold on it, Nick Tennyson will address that one. Okay, 2-2 in the consent as well. If it gets a hold, Darcy Dale. 2-3 not in the consent. That's
John Prulich.
capital expenditures. That's John. 2-4 general town appropriations.
Phil?
Phil. 2-5 the school district capital expenditures.
Phil?
That one
Wouldn't
you
that
might
be
want to
the school?
reconsider.
No,
That's,
they recommend no action.
yeah, so that's gonna have to be somebody else.
School.
And would
I
that
think
be
it's-
like Jean Lee or somebody like that, maybe?
Well, typically, the school
Right.
does their own, but we
Yes.
put this in on them, so I don't know how they're gonna feel about that, so, and we're asking them to make the motion.
I'm happy to do it if they...
All right, let's say Scott on that one. Okay,
Although on that article, I would like to,
say something.
yeah.
Okay, so Phil comment. Scott motion then?
Yep.
Okay. 2-6 a water enterprise.
Nick?
Nick T. 2.7 was in the consent, annual financial actions, and if it's held, that's Darcy Dale. 2.8, the community preservation budget. I would assume that's going to be
Somebody from
Jay Butler
CPA.
Jay
or
Butler.
somebody from there.
Yep.
Okay.
We voted favorable on that last time, or did we
No, we didn't vote because of the,
vote?
we didn't vote because of the community house.
We didn't vote with that, and we can talk about that right now since we're on it. So I reached out to Jay, and we spoke briefly about, well, at length, I guess. And they were saying because the town hall at the time, the ask was for some money from CPC, and then some other ask was going to be out of the general funds. The CPC was thinking about future town hall asks and would have given more grant money to town hall in lieu of giving it to community house, but the town hall didn't ask for as much as they thought they may be asking for. So they granted them what they asked, and then the community house had asked for the 197, and that was eligible. And you can stop me if I'm saying anything out of turn here, Allison, if you know something different. And the discussion with Jay was mostly about prioritizing and stuff like that, and it kind of led into the discussion about Scott's Capital Committee, and that would be really helpful for the CPC, because right now, if all this stuff goes through town meeting, we're pretty much at zero and starting fresh again with the monies next year for CPC, and we get the, you know, $400 and some thousand next year from the CPC grant from the state. But the prioritizing is tough now, because if someone's asking for it, we don't have a system for prioritizing.
Well, we do by our votes.
We do by our votes, but I think the question was, what's the mechanism for saying at town meeting that, you know, that they would have probably granted less to the community house or put community house down the line, because the CPC has a priority list on the website right now, kind of A, B, and C priorities, and Town Hall is up there in A priority, and the community house is lower down the list, but since the way the grants were asked, community house
They
is
can hold
bumped up
off
to
and
the
we
top.
can save the money. The idea, whether who asked
To
when
spend
or
it
what
this
for
year.
how much.
Right, we don't
is-
have to grant the grant, right?
Right, we can save the
You
money.
can vote each one separately. Right now, it's sort of a consent, but you can hold.
Right, you can hold on any one of them.
Okay.
So, I mean, the question would be holding some monies for Town Hall, because I would assume Town Hall would be back for some type of an ask,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, because,
Yeah, we're just in the.
you know, CPC is still limited in what they can do for Town Hall as far as historical preservation and stuff like that, but there'll still be a good element.
Yeah,
of
yeah,
that.
we put a kitchen in the senior center, so that flies. A lot of what's gonna happen in this building will fly. Not everything, no doubt, but,
The kitchen didn't go under historical resources. That went under affordable housing.
Yeah,
So,
different bucket.
Or-
and what about the American Legion work to the heating system?
yeah, I think that was under historical.
Yeah, so, I mean, we can talk
Right,
about that
there's
later,
the-
but the town hall is gonna require a lot of money, and to the extent that the CPC can help,
Right,
is gonna be huge.
right.
Any amount that the CPC pays for is less than what the property tax are gonna pay for. So,
Right.
So
And
I think that,
and maybe you can give some insight on what the CPC was thinking with,
yeah, I think the CPC, it's a completely, the community house is a completely eligible project, and the community house is a very loved
yeah.
building space for the town. So I think community preservation, what they're saying in approving it is saying, yes, it meets all the criteria, and then they're giving the vote actually to the people. So they're not gonna deny an eligible project so
Right.
that 5 to 7 people deny it. What they're doing is just saying, yes, it meets all the eligibility, now we'll put it in front of the residents. It'll be up to the residents to say, no, I don't want to put $200,000 towards that, knowing that the town hall is going to come to get me in the fall, or something to that effect.
Good point, and hopefully Jay will verbalize that at the meeting so people understand
Yeah.
Just because it's voted in favor for by the CPA doesn't mean it's an endorsement.
Right, and I
It's
think
been a battle we've had for a while.
it is a little bit confusing because we've tried to do that in the past, to let people know that the CPC just kind of, you get the grant ask, and if it's eligible,
Getting through the gate, right?
you gotta bring it to the,
right.
to the people,
Yeah.
you know? And that's the mechanism of it.
Right.
And I think sometimes people think it's been endorsed, you know, by that board. They
But it's
think
not.
it's a worthy cause, it meets the eligibility, it fits in whatever bucket, but it's ultimately up to the people to decide.
That's a good point, yeah.
So, you know, that just needs to be stressed on the
So
floor.
we are presenting, our job is to present the warrant to town meeting. Even though CPC approved an amount, we could approve a smaller amount.
Correct. We
Because
could
it-
recommend, we could recommend.
Recommend a small amount.
Recommend a small
And
amount.
Allison, can you remember what Wenham had put it on their warrant as well, and the number was only like 50,000 or?
So I
30.
believe they asked for a 2/3 share from Hamilton and a 1/3 from Wenham. So they asked, I believe, for 97, 100,000, somewhere around there from Wenham, and 200,000 just about from Hamilton. Hamilton approved the whole 200. Wenham only approved 47 or 50. So they only approved, their CPC only approved half the ask. So, that's just how they ended up voting it. Which Wenham, I will say, does tend to vote differently.
They vote differently, and in the past, when we've funded some of the playgrounds in the past, they've funded a lot lower level of whatever we've committed to it.
But I think that just says we should all, you know, again, I think with the capital planning committee and everyone meeting and discussing, hopefully we can all get on the same page. But I think, yeah, the funds are limited. The CPC is very aware that their funding is very limited. And they do a great job talking to applicants and ask them if they're fundraising in other ways, or
Right.
they're doing their job and their due diligence, but at the end of the day, I think they're putting it forward so that the residents get to vote on how they would like to see that money spent.
I'd feel more comfortable recommending it if there was some master fundraising plan that we saw some effort, because it was sort of, it's almost like a match, right? You raise 200, we give you 200 type of
Right.
thing. Our town doesn't think they have that
The
plan in
the
place
community
yet.
house doesn't have that, I don't think, right now.
Right, so it's sort of, I think it should be part of a larger picture.
Right, and the other thing to remember is next year, when those CPC coffers are filled back up again with the state match, or whatever percentage it ends up being, we average about 400 and some $1,000 total, and about 30 of that is already encumbered for paying our debt services on the Sagamore Hill, which is about 112 or 115,000 a year. Actually, I think Donovan Field rolls off, and that's about 40,000, but
41, 42?
Oh, what if we matched the Wenham amount?
We
At 50?
recommend.
Just, you know, they had a rationale, could show where both towns are still trying to support the community house. And it saves most of our powder for
So how do we
town
do
hall.
that, Donna? How do we recommend, can we recommend a lower amount, and then they have to make a motion on the floor, and you can do that?
Yes, you can do that. So the only thing you can't do with CPC recommended projects is you can't increase the amount over what CPC recommended, but you can decrease it.
But we here today don't have to, we could vote, we support all this, but with an amount that matches what Wenham was doing.
Yep.
And I don't,
And then we recommend it.
Right.
right.
There's no qualifications.
You
It's
have
just,
another-
that's our view of what should be done.
I don't disagree with that, but how are we going to write that? Because part of that is, I think, it doesn't necessarily show support of our CPC that puts in a lot of effort towards this. I don't like that they're putting one thing forward and then we're saying we're going to vote something different.
Well, I think it shows they're looking for some sense of prioritization. and they wouldn't have done
we-
this if
we
there
have a
were
different
other
agenda than
things
they
that are
have, I
being
think.
asked. So
Right.
I don't get the feeling, it was eligible, so they voted it, and that's their job.
Right.
Our
And,
job
well,
is also to help with the prioritization of capital projects
Right,
in
and
town.
taxes
So
and-
even if they're not totally aligned, if Jay or one of us explains that,
Well, Allison, was that the full ask?
That was the full ask to the town of Hamilton. I just don't know that I don't personally feel comfortable if one committee does all this work to do what they're supposed to do, and they are a specific committee for this, and then we say, no, we're rethinking it, and we want to do it this way. I don't find that,
Not in conflict, though,
they're
because
not
they're just
conflict.
saying it passed all the gates.
they're saying it's
Well,
passed, but they also
They've
are.
approved the money.
They improved the money
I mean,
going forward.
Right, to what Allison's kind of getting at, and maybe I can help, is that when I was on the CPC committee, we had a handful of grants that came through when I was there, that they asked for $100,000. And we said, I don't know if we can give you $100,000, I don't know if we want to, and the CPC had actually lowered that amount. Like, I think the Bucher or the Winthrop, one of those playgrounds, we had kind of gotten what Wenham was giving, and then we'd reduced the amount that we had decided to give them. So this seems like the CPC made the decision to grant the full ask for the community house, so they were in favor of that. I think if they had thought about it more and thought they wanted to lower it, they would have lowered the ask.
Lowered it.
Right.
They would have lowered what they wanted to give.
I don't know that we're in conflict. I think that their job is to make sure it meets all the requirements. Our job is to look at more fiduciary, more big picture, more budgetary. They're not looking at the town budget, they're
But
looking
they
at their
are.
budget.
But that's what I'm trying to say, they are.
They haven't sat in a budget meeting with us.
No, but I think
So-
though, to my conversation with Jay on the phone, he was saying that the CP is very strongly behind the town hall renovation. If the town hall renovation had come forward and asked for more money, they would have probably granted more money and lowered the community house amount. But since that wasn't asked for, they gave the community house the full amount. So it's back to that.
There's no deadline on the money being spent. This didn't have to be spent this year.
No,
Right.
no.
So I don't understand the argument. I mean, it doesn't matter. They've recommended it, and we can change it. I mean, we're not a rubber stamp committee, so we can
No.
voice our recommendation. So once again, we're letting the town vote. We're just giving our recommendation.
Right.
So we can
Jeff,
vote.
you have thoughts?
we
I
can-
see the wheels turning up there.
No, how about, I think it's a good, to Scott's point, I think it's a good compromise to match what Wenham's doing. It shows support for the community center, which it is kind of the heart of a lot of what happens in town. I fully support it. It's just that we have this gorilla in the room, which is town hall, which needs
Right.
the bulk of the money. So I think it's a good compromise. So how about I make a motion that we approve to
Recommend.
match or recommend matching Wenham's contribution to the community house at $50,000.
and could I ask you to add on to that a little bit?
Yeah.
And the rest of the CPC budget?
Second that.
Um,
I'm gonna get 50 out of that.
Yeah, just because that's what
all right, any other discussion?
they do.
Oh, they did. They did 47.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm opposed.
I'm thinking about it.
It's tough though, because you're not, it's tough that you can't say you're
One second.
opposed, because then you would oppose the entire, that's what's tough for Allison. You don't really want to oppose, you want to vote in favor of it, so
I'm
it's
gonna
difficult for her.
I'm gonna abstain, Mary Alice, so you can write me down as a undecided.
But you got to be careful how you word it, because Allison can't be opposed to it, because she's actually in favor of all of them, just opposed to the recommendation changing, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, she's in
I'm
agreement with
opposed to the
everything.
motion that was just made to reduce the amount.
Right.
But she's in favor of the article. How do you
Oh,
word that
yeah.
on the warrant?
What's your hesitation, Sean?
Being on that committee, that committee has reduced the ask from people
Yeah.
when they know there's other things, whatever, and they granted them the full ask. So that's my hesitation with it. If they had said, well, we know we want to keep a little monies, or we know town hall's coming, we're only going to give you 100,000 instead of 200,000. then, I think I would be more for it, but it's almost second guessing what, like to Allison's point, what they've already talked
See what
about.
Allison's saying, okay.
So that's my hesitation
No, I
on it.
appreciate that.
But I do agree with your point too, and Scott's point that, you know, we need to keep some of that money for the other giant ticket items in the room, like you said. And the community house has been it's one of our bigger, it will be, I think, one of our kind of top grantees over the years, besides the Legion and a few other things in Sagamore Hill is, you know, if this 200,000 gets approved, they're up there on the list of top monies that we've given from CPC, because they've been back, I think this is 3 or 4 times now for different things.
May I recommend a way to structure your vote?
Yes.
That you make a motion to recommend favorable action on projects 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. You take a separate motion on whether to recommend favorable action for project 4. And then the warrant can reflect your votes on those 2 separate motions.
Good suggestion. I move that we recommend favorable action on CPC items 1, 2, 3,
5 and 6.
5, and 6.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
You want to move the 50 grand?
So, yeah, I move that we recommend matching the Wenham gift of $50,000 for historic preservation project community house. Where is it?
You can say project 4 if you want.
All right, project 4.
A second? Did somebody
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Opposed.
3 aye, 1 opposed, 1 abstain.
All right, so the next question for me is, Jay's going to make the motion. Are you guys going to speak to this? Is FinCom going to want to speak to this, or what?
FinCom doesn't have, I don't believe, like I said, I'll have to discuss it with the committee on Wednesday.
Okay.
But I don't expect them to speak to this.
All right, and what about the BOS?
The town hall committee, I mean, would you want to speak to it for a few
Sure.
seconds?
Sure.
Can I say too, if this is the actions you want to take in the future, that we should have meetings prior with our committees to say that this is we only want to match what Wenham does, we don't want to exceed it, and we want the maximum on the money going towards strictly the Hamilton Town Hall for historic. You should be having those discussions prior to getting here, so we're more collaborative.
That would also help
Makes sense.
with getting the
Phil,
FinCom
I'm
warrant
sorry,
signed.
Phil, would you just mind coming up?
I think the pacing here is a little late because we're now out of sync with you.
Right.
Because the version of the warrant we saw and the amounts we saw and we voted on are now different from what's going to be published. And we put together this, what I consider a fairly good-sized document to try and inform the town, which is now already out of date in the publications tomorrow. So it's,
I think we're not changing the warrant. The warrant's going to stay the same. We're going to recommend
well,
those.
the amounts are different, though. Well, okay, you're right.
Yeah, we're going to
I
make a motion
misspoke.
on the floor.
The amounts that will be considered at the town now are different.
They could vote at town
And
hall.
I believe there may be some number changes later in the warrant as well, at least concerning town hall, which is different from what we had when we
Town
voted.
can still, this town will still be able to vote to approve the 197,000.
Right.
It's
But
to start our
later in the warrant, there's also a change, I think, coming up for Town Hall Building Committee. That number has changed from what we had when we voted. So I would like to recommend that this whole process be pushed forward about a month so that we can get stuff out to the town earlier, and that your committee, our committee, and all the other committees in town can vet, because we had Jay come in, present to us, we talked to him, we got our numbers, and we voted. And now, you know, so some things are different. So hopefully going forward, we can move this process up a little earlier.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, Phil.
All right, I think that covers us for 2-8. 2-9 was in the consent. And who did we have for that?
John Prulich
John Prulich.
comes up.
Okay, if it comes up on a
2.9
hold.
is John? Okay.
Yep, if it comes up on a hold. 210 was the HDC.
Brian?
Or? I would assume, well, Rick is the
Oh, the
new
new-
chair.
Oh,
So
okay.
we'll just pencil in Rick Mitchell. And Brian and I have kind of been going back and forth. He wasn't exactly happy with the language, saying it was part of the tax rate. And so it is a little confusing. It was on last year's ATM warrant, very similar. It wasn't as robust of a summary. It did say that it was a .04 of a cent there on the 1,000 for assessed valuation on last year's warrant. This one is giving them more of a summary. But I think the kind of thing that's a sticking point with Brian, and it's a little bit of a point of confusion, is it's a meals tax, but it's coming from people in Hamilton and people passing through Hamilton. So my confusion is, we're saying it's a tax, which it is, and it goes in the general fund, so we're collecting it, but then we're pulling it back out, but it's not all Hamilton taxpayer money.
But it's all Hamilton money that we can't use to spend on other things in town.
Right.
So from the perspective of that it's not all taxpayer money generated by Hamilton taxpayers, you're absolutely right. But it is all general fund money.
Right.
And the minute you vote to put some of that money in the HDC, which I think is a worthy cause, something the town meeting supported in 2002 and has every year since then, I'm not speaking against that. But it is general fund money that could be used in other areas of the budget if you weren't making
Yeah,
this
but it doesn't cost $26.
It's the equivalent of $26 to replace it in the budget, to have it in the budget covering the other items.
You reimburse those separately. I don't think
It's kind of confusing, right?
confusing, because we're not actually increasing our tax rate.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with it. I understand
Yeah.
technically it gets into the general fund. I understand that. And then
Who wrote this?
Who
wrote this?
This last part here, I did.
But if
What-
we did not give the money to the HDC, so the
Yeah.
money comes in from the meals tax,
Right.
Yeah,
it goes into our general fund,
Right.
yeah,
okay?
yeah.
And it just sat there, you wouldn't have this cost. You're taking it out to give it to HDC, so it does have a fiscal impact to people's taxes.
Oh, it doesn't, because it's meals tax, it's not property tax.
But it's, but
You have a budget. Your budget is X, right? And all of our sources of income can be used to pay for X. But you're going to take a piece of that source of income and put it somewhere else. You still have this budget.
Yep.
You're still going to have to pay for the whole budget. So in order to pay for X, you have to offset that.
If you don't get the meals tax. If you get the meals tax, it's no impact at all.
If you get the meals tax, but
Yeah.
you're giving the meals tax away. You're taking it and giving it away.
But you can't use it for other things.
Yes, you can.
Can't
Yeah,
you
we
say
could use it
something
for
like this
anything.
is offset
The way
by
it's
the
written.
income received through
Our meals
via
tax is
meals tax?
specifically
They offset each other.
not a
My-
property
my-
tax. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, the reason why this has an impact on the tax rate is, to Joe's point, if this money was not given to HDC, this money would be a funding source to our budget.
Right.
Because this money is given to HDC, we now need to raise more taxes. We need to raise an additional $74,880 from taxation. That's what the impact on the tax rate is. So you have your budget. If you didn't give the money away, that would be $74,880 less that you would have to raise from taxation.
Yeah, makes sense.
It makes sense, but the
That's-
local meals tax was created for this fund. It wasn't created to go into the general fund, right? Correct? Or
It was created, well, it's general fund revenue, but then the town voted to allocate it to the
So
HDC.
the local meals tax existed before the Hamilton Development Corporation.
No, it all happened at the same time.
That's my
Opposite.
point. Yeah.
Same inception.
The state,
It
the
never
state,
went
the
into
state,
the-
no, the state allowed the increase of the local meals tax in, during the recession to allow municipalities to offset their expenses through other ways. It was an opportunity. Lots of communities, small communities like Hamilton and several other suburban-type communities or rural communities felt that it would be unfair to do that to their local businesses. The way they eventually passed it and were able to get support for it was to say that that money would go back into supporting the communities.
Right, for
The
improvements in
community
downtown
business, the business community. And that was how you passed it here. But the state law doesn't allow you to just permanently allocate that to go to places like the HDC. Salem uses a portion of their meals tax to offset visitorship and tourism, and they have a whole
Okay.
budget for advertising and things. They use a piece of that. But the state law doesn't allow you to automatically do it. You have to reappropriate this money every year. And you've been doing that. And I'm in favor of it. I'm not trying to argue against it, but I am saying there is a fiscal impact.
But, okay, so, I guess I think the only issue I have with it, you says increased. Well, it didn't increase because we had it last year, the year before, so it was a really, it's an impact of 26, but it's not an increase of 26 cents. It's an impact of 26 cents, it's not an increase.
I could say that it's an impact of 26.
Yeah, but it's not an increase, we haven't increased it. Rick, we're talking about the meals tax for
that's why
HTC.
he's
Have you
here.
read the warrant article?
I think that's why Rick's here.
Well, this actually goes to show the power of public TV, because I'm watching this on TV and I'm going, oh, okay. So as Joe mentioned, state law does dictate how the money is spent, but just for the purposes of the will of the people in the town of Hamilton, the original proposal, as proposed, was dedicate this fund for the improvement and beautification of the downtown, the commercial district. And that's always been the intent. So I'm just going to, as now the new president of the board, just say that, that's always been the intent. That's where the money has been spent. In fact, the town, we've always dedicated 10% of what the receipts are back to the town, and the town doesn't spend them. So we take the money back and do flowers and wreaths and branches and baskets. So that was the original intent. So, and the increase is from the meals tax, and it's probably from the added, our wonderful bakery, and from Cumberland Farms, all the activity that goes there, and that's just an increase in the receipts. So while it goes into the general fund, the intent of the voters always was to go to the HDC.
I'm fine with the description if it said an impact, not increase.
I guess that's my thing was the increase, but I think if we change it to the impact, I think that's the better understanding of it. It is still a little tricky to understand, wrap your head around.
I
It
get
makes
the
sense.
concept.
Yeah, I mean, because it goes from the town of Hamilton, well, it doesn't go from the town, it actually goes from the merchants and the restaurants to the Department of Revenue. The revenue allocates it back to the town reallocates it back to the HDC.
Right.
Based on its original intent. But I guess, Joe, what you're saying is that it could be dedicated to something else.
It could be. If you didn't take this vote, it would be it would come back to us from the state, and we could do with it when anything else we would normally do with general fund revenue.
Let me answer that question.
So the minute you consider it that way, by taking it and putting it here, which is, again, not something I'm not something
No,
I'm...
I got it.
Just saying that it does have an impact on how we raise the rest of our taxes.
Well, the interesting point is that the HDC then takes part of that money and pays taxes on the land that it owns. So that actually comes back to the town, and we don't have to pay that. We're a tax-exempt nonprofit, and we're paying $8,000 a year in taxes. So we actually are using that money to reduce the tax rate. So...
You're in
Circular
sales, right?
cash.
That's some tough accounting there.
That's wild.
Well, not really. I mean, we could have said we're not paying our taxes, which would have impacted the tax rate.
Right.
Yep.
So
Okay.
it's a small contribution, but we thought it was a legitimate thing to do.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Rick.
All right.
Rick, are you fine with making the motion at town meeting for that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
What's that?
I'm going to backtrack just a little bit here, and just looking at some of the recommendations. On 2-2, Board of Selectmen recommends question mark, question mark.
Yep.
On the compensation classification table.
I make a motion that the Board of Selectmen vote favorably on all the items we selected for the consent motion.
Good one.
I like that.
I like that.
So
It's
let's take
a
them in.
consent motion on the consent motion items. I like that.
Let's make a little look-see
Second on
and
that.
make
It's a
sure
double
that we've
consent.
got.
That moves the meeting along. Thank you. Second? We've already voted.
Yep, all in favor? Aye, okay. So then,
Include 2-4, though.
yeah, I was gonna say, the next
Just
one
a-
here is 2.4 is the General Town Departmental Appropriations. We didn't take a vote on that at the last meeting. Finance Advisory Committee votes 4-0 on favorable action, just by the way.
Voted a which?
On 2-4, we
budget.
did not make a recommendation on it. Finance Advisory Committee voted 4-0 and recommending favorable action, so they recommended it.
Recommendation, we vote favorably on Article 2.4. Just confirming, I just want the note about confirming that the
73.
$73,000 for the SRO is not included in that.
It's only, we've got it in the, it is in the town
It
budget.
isn't there currently?
Mhm.
73,000 for the SRO is in the town budget that they've already
No, I'm sorry, we're on 2-.
We're on 2-4.
Just 4, which is the, well, that's,
Which also gives the money to the school districts.
To school
We want to
districts.
make sure it's not in the school district's budget, not in the,
As far as I know, it's in both places.
that, I agree.
Which is what we had.
I was both included in the town's budget because the intention was to have it removed from the school.
Yep,
Correct.
I agree with that.
I have not heard that the school has reduced
And we're
their
gonna,
budget.
we're going to confirm that,
Confirm that
so.
tomorrow.
So we're gonna confirm that tomorrow.
So make a motion that we,
They're waiting for us to approve the agreement that takes it out of their budget.
That we did
So
tonight.
we're in a loop. Until we move,
Right,
they're
we're
not
in-
going to move.
yeah.
So
Well,
we deal with it later, but
we voted for the 2 agreements tonight, so.
make a motion,
You
we
voted- you
recommend
voted
favorable
for
action on this pending confirmation of the $72,000 for the SRO is in the town budget, not the school budget.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
second.
All those in favor?
I'm going to abstain.
Aye. 4-4, one opposed,
4-0,
Allison.
So is the,
Opposed.
Or, sorry, I'm sorry, abstain, I apologize.
Four.
Are you abstaining over the 73,000, or is it more complex than that?
No, I want to, yeah, I abstain over the 73,000.
Okay, duly noted.
so you want the warrant recommendation to read that way?
I don't know how we want it to read. I mean, we should think about it, but we should, it's not really what needs to read that way. We just need to confirm that the money's in the right spot.
Well,
Right.
we go to print tomorrow,
But you go to
right?
print
Go
tomorrow.
print tomorrow. So what are you you're approving it, you're either approving that number or you're changing the warrant article to say your motion, correct?
You wouldn't
Board never
change
did
the
them.
warrant article. We're just talking about the recommendation. How do you want your recommendation to read?
Well, if there's a hang-up about it, why don't we make a recommendation on the floor?
Okay.
Recommendation for what?
The warrant article.
That the
For
SRO should
favorable
come out of
action
the
on
town
this.
budget, not the school budget.
Sure.
I think that's a better recommendation. I would vote in favor of that recommendation.
Do you
So I
wanna
make a motion that the Board of Selectmen make a recommendation on Article 2-9 at the annual town meeting.
2-4.
2-4.
2-4.
And if everything goes fine, we'll just say we make a recommendation on the floor because we're waiting for that money to
Confirmation,
roll
yeah.
off, a confirmation to roll off the school budget and onto our budget
Yep.
for the SRO.
Will you say that?
Is there a second? Then I'll.
Then your
read
comment.
it.
Do we have a second on Allison's motion?
Second.
All right.
So I don't think we should do this because it's causing confusion, and we're trying to eliminate the confusion. And unfortunately, it's a rarefied air of people who actually understand what's going on right now, but by the time we get to town meeting, we say yes to this, which we already have. Then the second step, which is later on our agenda, is agreeing that the SRR agreements, we authorize Joe to enter those with the school committee. Then the school committee is going to take it out of their budget. So by putting something in here, I think we're inducing some confusion that doesn't need to exist.
So it's a simple matter. How do we solve it simply?
By approving by us recommending this Article 2-4.
And then this school district has an extra $72,000 in their budget?
No, they're,
You're not approving the budget by voting your recommendation. You know, it still has to be voted by town
if the
meeting.
school committee comes forward and they don't modify their budget by $72,000,
I mean, then
we can say, when they stand up there
Yeah.
to say it, we're saying, no,
Yeah, that's true.
not okay. Take the $72,000 out, because we already got it. And then we have to go through all this explanation of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
But the whole idea of trying to get the intermunicipal agreement in place was to remove all this drama. So I don't think we should create drama in the warrant when we're about to alleviate it later in this meeting.
We already
Hopefully.
voted it prior to you
Right.
getting here, Scott. So we've already approved both
great.
agreements. That's done.
And to me, we're debating this, a motion has been made and seconded, and I would not support it because I think we add drama to the warrant that's unnecessary.
Right, and if the phone call with Jeff tomorrow morning goes, yep, it's taken out, or
They already said if
recertify, right,
we have all the agreements
right,
that and all the elements that they asked for.
right. All right, so I think Allison made a motion to change our recommendation from,
You did have an approved motion, 401.
we have an approved motion,
You had an approved motion, 401. And then
But Allison made
an
another one.
recommendation.
but Allison made another one, and it's been seconded. So now, now we have to vote on that motion, correct, Donna?
That's right.
The motion you're voting on is to make a recommendation at
On the
town
floor.
meeting, to put that in your warrant.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so let's vote on the recommendation to make a recommendation on town floor from Allison's motion that's been seconded. All those in favor? All right, all those opposed?
Okay.
All right,
So what's the recommendation going into the warrant?
the recommendation
So the
is
motion,
a
the original
previous motion
recommend-
that we
Favorable action,
recommend
401.
favorable action.
4-0 and 1 abstention is how we roll.
Right.
401, okay.
All right.
We're
2-5, 2-6 is good, 2-7 is good, 2-8.
2-8, you made a motion
Made the
on.
motion already. 2-9, we need a recommendation. And this is a consent item that, actually, we were favorable on it.
2-9, yeah, we're favorable, and John
Favorable on that.
Coolidge is talking about it, so.
2-10, is Rick all set?
2-11 you voted.
2-11 is in the consent, we voted it.
Speaking of that, 211 would be David Wanger.
Okay, yep, thank you.
Can I just hold for just a second? Rick Mitchell just came in. Rick, we've got you down for 210. Are you speaking to the HDC 210? Okay.
Yeah. All right, 2-12.
Who's doing 211?
211 is David Wanger, if it's held.
If it's held, otherwise it's in the consent.
All right, and then we've got 2-12, the Patent Homestead operating budget. We've made a recommendation for it, now it's just who's gonna make the motion.
I'm happy to make the motion. I think Joe wants to talk, right?
I do,
Yeah.
please.
All right. So I would ask that, Jeff, that you recognize the town manager to speak.
Oh, Joe? Okay. Not you.
Is that all right?
All right, so Scott's gonna make
You
the
can't
motion.
make, you're not
I can't,
so you can't
I'm
make a
not, I
motion.
wouldn't deign to make a
Right.
recommendation.
All right,
Oh, so
so,
actually, so Scott, you're going to ask me for permission to have him speak?
Yeah, I'll make the
so,
motion.
yeah, Scott will make the motion, Joe will speak to it.
All right.
I'm pretty sure that Jeff Pruitt will talk to this article.
John Prulidge, you said?
John Pruitt, yes.
That's all right. All right, so John Prulidge may speak to it as well. Okay.
Can I ask a question on 2-2?
Sure.
I don't understand how it has no tax impact. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Allison. Thanks, Marissa.
I was actually reading that again after you had mentioned it earlier, and I think that we should probably reward it to say something to the effect that the tax rate impact of the compensation classification table is reflected on Article 2-4. What we're saying is that the tax implication is actually part of our budget.
The general appropriation.
Yeah, so by saying no direct tax impact, now that I think of it, we should probably just say it's being reflected on Article 2-4 on town's budget.
I prefer that.
Yeah, I
Because
like
there is
that.
definitely.
If everyone is in
Referring to
agreement,
that,
yeah.
and then that's where the funding source is.
That's where the,
An additional
yeah.
impact, but there's an impact, right? Got
There's
it.
definitely an impact. yeah.
Perfect.
okay, thank
Good,
you.
good question, Allison. All right, back to two.
So on the homestead, though,
212.
the Finance Committee voted to make no recommendation on the article, but then you're gonna speak to it to make a recommendation? To talk to in terms of making a recommendation or not making a recommendation, or just in general, just
going to explain
Oh.
why we didn't
make a recommendation? Gotcha.
Okay, so FinCom's gonna, John Pruitt will just stand up for FinCom and explain why you didn't make a recommendation on it.
That's what,
Okay.
yeah, okay, that makes sense, thank you.
2-13, the stabilization fund.
We've already voted on that.
We've already voted on that, and who?
Phil.
Phil,
We've already voted on the next 5.
okay.
Phil is also on capital.
So Phil for 214. 215 was in the consent if it gets held. Who was?
Darcy.
Those are this one.
Darcy. 2-16.
We voted on already.
We voted on already,
David Wanger.
and David Wanger will speak to it, or make the motion.
Make a motion, yep.
2-17, the water distribution debt. We made a recommendation already. And do we have
Nick T.
Nick Tenson?
I'll question whether Nick is the appropriate, I mean, he's perfectly happy to read the article. I don't think he'll have a lot to say about it. If questions come up, he would want to defer probably to Tim or somebody.
Okay. So Nick,
Well, aside from reading it, is he going to simply say we would suggest that you would approve it, or?
We recommended approval.
Yeah, but when he reads it, usually I recognize them, and then they say at least a few words to say why they.
he'll make the motion and just say, the Finance Committee recommends favorable action on this.
Okay.
Tim, are you going to are you gonna be there at town meeting? And are you planning on speaking anything specifically, or just there to support? Okay.
All right, so we'll say Nick will make the motion, say a few words that you've recommended favorable action on it, and if there's any follow-up questions, Tim will be there to be recognized.
Okay.
Okay, 2-18, the debt for the water treatment plant.
We did
That's
not
why I
vote.
have Tim here tonight. So 218 would be Nick, also in the FinCom, and I have, Tim is here tonight to speak to this specific item. You all had questions.
Yes.
Bill, remind me, did you wind up making a recommendation on this motion?
Yeah, you've got question marks here for recommendation.
You have a question, so I believe we recommended approval.
Yeah, 4-0.
And then, 4-0?
We recommended 4-0.
So somebody wasn't at that meeting.
Correct.
Yeah, John wasn't at that meeting.
So it's about the organics. There's an increase of organics.
Right, so Tim, if you could come up and just be recognized, and we had a few questions, I think, at the last meeting, just about kind of what the additional money is going to, why we need it, what it's going to improve. Is it, because I think maybe Scott had mentioned we had flow rate issues before, and I think we've remedied most of that, but now we're having more organics because some of the wells that we had offline a little bit, or now we're doing more demand on them. There's more
Sure.
particulate, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, Tim Wilson, Director of Public Works. The water sources haven't changed. You know, they've been there for a long time, and it kind of boils down to originally back in when that plant, excuse me, I've been sick for a couple days, so I think back when that plant was designed, it was not designed to treat organics in the source water. Over time, those organics have increased with drought conditions and things like that, and just the natural environment changing. And we're having more and more problems treating the organics at the plant because it's not designed to do that. Our plant was designed to treat iron and manganese, and it does, since the upgrades, it's done a great job doing that. We have achieved great results with that project, so that was the right step forward. But we did mention early on in that project that we may have to do some additional upgrades following that project, and we do. In order for us to keep the sources that we have and provide optimum quality of water, this pre-treatment process would, in essence, remove the organics prior to filtration. And then our filtration plant would work to remove the iron and manganese. So it's just a step in the puzzle. We've done significant work in the distribution system as well as the treatment facility, and this is just the next step to improve the water quality and provide optimum water to the residents of Hamilton.
So will this additional work be under the same roof as our water treatment plant now, or is it a pre-treating at some of the wells?
No, it's actually an addition to the plant. It's going to be a separate little building, separate process. So it's going to intercept the groundwater, the raw water before it comes into the plant. It's going to treat it, and then it's going to push the water into the filtration plant.
So it's a pre-plant treatment.
Yep.
Then the plant will treat it as it does now.
It does today, yep.
Iron and manganese and
That's
whatnot.
correct.
And the risks of the failure of this filtering the organics is what? So we sort of understand.
Yeah, I mean, we use chlorine as an oxidant, and with the organics and chlorine, it does create some disinfection byproducts in our system. We've been there is a maximum contaminant level that DEP sets forth, and we have been pretty close to that, and we have made improvements into the system. We are actually, if you've noticed, there are some flushing units in the system, trying to keep the age of the water, keep the water moving to reduce those disinfection byproducts, and but this will reduce the problem, the source, prior to distribution. So if we can remove it at the source, we will have less impact in the system.
Right. And how quickly can it be, once it gets voted on, and if it gets approved, how quickly does it get, do you move forward with the,
we have preliminary, we have a system in mind to use. It's almost kind of like a small package.
Is it like a kit kind of a thing?
Kind of, yeah. And you know, obviously need the building to house it. But we are looking at moving fairly quickly. We do have a design engineer in mind. He has put a kind of a preliminary proposal together and an estimate, which this number came from. So we're fairly confident that this number is adequate to get the work done, to get it bid out, designed and bid out. It's got to go through a permitting process through DEP, but I think we can move fairly quickly. It's something that I think we can, winter's always a great time, but talking with Dave Dolan, the primary operator, he did mention that there would be somewhat limited impact to our current production because we can build it all offline, and then there will be a period of time that we switch over and include it. So doesn't really matter really when we do it, but it would be preferred, obviously, fall, winter with the low demand season. But that's kind of what we would shoot for, sure.
I know we've got Dave here tonight. Is there additional staffing issues, training, et cetera, that will also covered in this?
It's covered in the cost, the training of the, yeah, of the. I think what we met with the rep, one of the reps that we're looking at, and he mentioned it was a fairly easy process. It's you know, it's something that he felt very confident that Dave and Brian, our two operators, could handle in the current operational tasks.
And we had looked at all these upgrades kind of to, well, excluding this upgrade to the plant a couple of years ago now. Now we've done all these steps. Is there anything else that is foreseeable that we need to improve? Like, I'm just kind of thinking we spent a lot of money on it, the upgrades, you know, and I thought that was kind of the end of it, but it seems like this is an additional issue that we've gotten, but you know, was this a foreseeable issue at the time, or we just didn't know that we were going to have this organics issue?
Well, we didn't know for sure. There was issues before. That's why I think they went to the switch out into the different filtration media, but that created additional issues.
Right.
So we knew that going back to the original design filter media, there could be this issue coming up. We weren't sure, but we knew we had plans to be able to treat it and to be able to handle it. And, you know, we've done a lot of improvements in the distribution. A lot of the old aged pipe has been replaced. So our system out in the, I still have plans to do a little bit more out there, but we've kind of worked a little backwards. We've done distribution, and then we went to treatment, and now we're looking at the sources. Right. I would say, and Dave might have a comment on this, but our wells are older. They are in the Ipswich River, so they are not ideal water quality conditions, but we have what we have, and we have to be able to treat it effectively. And this is the step to do it, considering what we have to work with at this time. Obviously, we're going to look planning larger picture thoughts, and we'll come in front, and Joe and I will have some conversations about how to move forward. But in this near future, obviously, this is something that we should consider to be able to treat the water that we have and the sources that we use.
Right, and so minus this next phase to help us with the organics, the plant currently, the upgrades that we've done to it, we're operating it the best the plant can operate. We're back to the back flush time and all that stuff with the tanks and everything like that. We're as good as it can get at the moment.
Yes, it's back to design. I think Dave has seen a lot of good signs, not only with the filtration, not only with the chemicals, as well as the new SCADA system. We've had a lot more reliability in our alarms and controls.
And we upgraded the software now?
We upgraded the software. We've also got rid of the Verizon copper lines that connect our outlying wells, School Street and Browns Hill Reservoir. We're all radio frequency now, so that is a lot more reliable.
Right. That
gives us a lot more control. Yep.
And there's a lot of kind of surface rust and whatnot on some of the pipes in there. We had talked about part of some of the renovations there would be fixing some of those valves, repainting some stuff.
We did. That's all, and I'd be happy to show you. I mean, we've done a lot of work there, and I know Dave and Brian have been doing some more work after that project's been over. So we've made a lot of improvements. It's well needed, but I think it was a very successful project.
Any other questions for Tim while we've got him here about it?
I appreciate all the work.
Everything,
so, yeah, no,
I wondered if Dave had any comments because he attended tonight. Did you have anything you wanted to say?
He's got to come up, Dave, please.
Hi, Dave Dolan, plant operator. I think this is going to be a much needed project to move forward. It's pretty hard to keep chasing these disinfection byproducts, and in order for us to comply and make it safe, we have to keep wasting water.
Right.
And the situation in repairing the plant was to not have to do that. And we've gotten to a point now where I have to continuously run water in a certain area of town to make it safe for the consumer out there.
Right,
so,
to keep fresh water out there so it doesn't
you just got to keep turning it over because it's an age problem. There's no looping out there. It's just dead end, and the water gets old.
Right.
And that's what creates these byproducts. The other side of town, for some reason, seems to be okay. We have 2 sample sites, but it's just one particular area. There's not a lot of residential use out there. So there's a large span of water main that's just very hard to turn it over. So in order to comply with the EPA and the DEP regs, we really need to do this. There really is no other option,
right,
to be honest. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
I have a few questions, Tim.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. How big a construction project is this? It's $1.5 million. What can the neighbors expect about what's going to be going on down that street?
I think it's It's going to be hopefully a prefab building that we can bring in. Poured, concrete foundation, probably slab on grade. I'm not sure. I don't have the design details, but.
Do you know ballpark footprint?
What do you say, 25?
35 by 50.
35, yeah.
So that's pretty, I'm to Scott's point, that's pretty substantial for, I remember the talk when the plant was built, I mean, I don't remember, but the talk that people have said was they wanted that plant small because of the impact on the neighborhood. And I'm not sure how butters would feel about that. I mean, I think, I agree with Dave that it's a much-needed thing, but I'm worried about the size of it. What, is it going kind of on the, what part of the plant will it be going on to?
Essentially, where we've kind of talked about is outside of the existing chemical feed room now.
Okay.
And the size would be approximately the same as the chemical feed room.
Right, so
So
it's just
if you
going to kind
remember
of
what that looked
go out.
like, it's not huge. It's one story, slab, block built. It's not going to really take up any more space than what's already there. So you had the little bit of grass section outside there off the double doors.
So you just
That's
lose
where it's
that
going to go.
section.
We're just going to take the grass space. It would not create any more truck traffic, deliveries, or anything of that nature. No.
Supplies or?
No.
Okay, that was going to be one of my other questions, because that's what the neighbors were
In
concerned
fact,
about.
we may be able to utilize the byproduct of that system going forward for snow and ice removal. So that could be a plus side to it. Just basically creates a salt brine type.
Like a calcium chloride kind of
Yeah.
thing or something.
Yeah. So, other than that, there would be no increase in truck traffic, only through the building stages, which wouldn't impact any more than what we just went through.
So Tim, the way the summary reads, it talks about what the benefit is doesn't increase chlorine in our water. But there's actually, this is something we have to do to comply with the EPA as well. It's not just trying to keep the amount of chlorine in our water down, but the residents.
Right. Yeah, so it's removing the organics. The chlorine and the organics and age come together and create this disinfection byproduct. So what this would, in essence, do is remove the organics and not, prior to chlorination and filtration.
The point being, our water's our water today.
That's correct.
If we approve this,
Yep.
it'll stay like it is.
Yep.
Same quality. But if we don't approve it, we're going to need to add more chlorine to our water.
We're going to, what we'll have is we'll be fairly close to the maximum contaminant level. We are having to do some things in the system, like as Dave was saying, some operational issues to keep that number low. If we do not do that, the number will increase due to the age and the amount of organics that we currently have. And we're seeing trending up in increase and not necessarily a decrease in organics. So.
Right, so we're currently using some kind of stopgaps, basically.
That's correct. It's a temporary measure.
Here's on those
It's
lines
temporary.
to keep the water
Yeah.
fresh.
Yep. Yep. And it's controlled.
It's costing us money to bleed those lines and just leave them running, right?
Yeah.
So
Costing us water and money. Yes, that's correct.
So
And operational time. I mean, they have to go up and set the
Somebody's gotta
units
go do all
up, and then they have to control them and remove them.
samples, et cetera,
Yep.
yada, yada.
That's correct.
So I appreciate you both coming out.
Any questions, Scott?
Just come up to the mic, Dave, please.
By not doing it, we're not increasing the amount of chlorine in the water. Because I can only go so far with chlorine, and there's a level of chlorine that you can only keep in the public water system, which is, believe it or not, 5 parts per million, which is crazy. I like to keep it below 1 part. And the reason for that is when you start getting above 1 part, the first mile of customers are getting gassed out, and you're going to get a lot of calls, and it tastes horrible. to maintain the proper amount of chlorine in the system, I only need to have 3/4 of a part leave in the plant. And that makes everybody happy, and it's safe, and it disinfects the water properly. So if you increase it on the beginning of the plant, you're going to increase it on what's going out. So my opinion of it is, by putting this new system in, we may even be able to decrease the amount of chlorine up front and still be able to maintain what we need in the system to make it safe.
Gotcha.
That's my hopes. It looks like it should go that way. So, all right.
Thank you.
Yep.
So my concern about, oh, sorry, Allison, you want to?
No, mine is, I agree with everything you've said. I'm 100% behind the project. But it feels to me we're having a budget meeting tonight. All of this should have had these discussions prior to this tonight. We're discussing the warrant tonight, and we're asking our employees to stay later, our volunteers. This shouldn't be we have to start doing these things sooner. We're voting it tonight, and we're asking what the project is for $1.5 million. I don't understand why we face this every meeting. These things have to get on the agendas sooner, and having these discussions, they should not be happening now, and FinCom's already voted theirs.
So I'd like to add something to what Allison said too, is sounds like we need to do it, and having our good water is critical. I have some other concerns though. Like we raised our water rates 5 years ago, and this will be the last year of the increase that we promised we would hold. So rates are going to be going up, I would imagine, but the select board will vote that next year. But we're taking on new debt, and the water enterprise has got to be, like any enterprise fund, has to be balanced. My other concern about this project, even though we need to do it, is that it's doing nothing to advance our water sources. That the Ipswich River watershed is challenged. We get challenged all the time. The whole association gets challenged all the time. There's trying to do reductions in our permits, when on the other side of town is all the water we need in the North Coastal Basin. It's not even the same Ipswich water supply. So, and that was, I understand the town manager wants to hold on the capital budget, wait till the news capital committee comes along, but the issue that keeps on coming up is we we do our best to deal with the water source that we have. It's just not a great water source, and the more we suck on that small straw, the more it draws stuff into it. So I'm just bringing up the point that I think the town needs to also think about priorities of the water source in going forward too. So as we think about saving money for whether it's town hall, which is great, you know, these are needs we have, but the water source and our ability to connect into the North Coastal Basin, I think is important, so that it's, to me, there's more than just this that's going to be coming forward related to our water as we go forward. Like next year we'll have some rate increases, which we're not going to be a surprise, but anybody, well, to us maybe, because we were involved in the planning, but I think to most residents it would be if there's an increase. And then any capital expenditure down Chabaco Road. So as we do Chabaco in the paving, I'd ask that we do whatever we can to think ahead for the planning of the interconnection, either into Manchester or from drawing from the water sources that we have out there that are in the North Coastal Basin. Will do. So I, like Allison, support what you're doing. I think you guys do a great job.
Unfortunately, this is what we have today, and those plans will be looked at, and we'll talk with Joe, and we'll move that forward even with the capital committee. If they're going to take quite a bit of time to put together, and you know, I think the two projects that I've kind of looking at, the one that I've completed and the one that we currently have in front of you, is a long time coming, in my opinion. It should have been done quite a while ago, and in fact, probably the plant that we currently have should have been a different style plan. So we're just trying to make use, obviously, until we can get to that larger picture with the current sources that we have. And we're very limited on what we can and can't do at this point. So,
thank you. Well, I make a motion that the Board of Selectmen recommend favorable action on Article 2-18.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous? Thank you very much, Tim. Thank you, Dave, for coming.
Before we go, I would just suggest that, I don't know if it's Nick or Tim or whomever, that for $1.5 million article, someone speak to the merits of this with some kind of presentation. You don't need overheads, but just to explain to people at town meeting what this is all about.
Great. I'll talk with Nick as well,
Great.
brief him up.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you. Feel better.
I'm getting better.
All right, 2-19.
We voted favorable action.
We voted favorable action.
John Poolidge is the FinCom rep, liaison to this.
PK. All right, whoops. Do we want to have anybody designated to speak if there's questions? Would John be able to handle the questions on that?
Tim for that.
Tim again?
Tim again.
Tim's on the hook again.
Is it a typo or just how it rounds out that it says the tax impact is 0 per 1,000 or $26?
And
should be in 04, I think.
What, in 219?
And which one are you looking at, Al?
220.
Oh, I'm looking at
Sorry,
219.
I'm sorry, I went
You're a
220.
step ahead
That's
of
what's
us.
throwing me off.
All right, so just real quick, John Prulidge is going to make the motion for 2-19, the Tobacco Wood paving project. Tim will speak to any questions if there are any. Comfortable with that?
Well, again, I think, it's one thing to make the motion. It's another thing to answer questions, but I think if you're asking for $1 million, someone ought to make a presentation.
I agree.
I don't know who it is, but whoever you guys work out, you can let Donna and me know for the script. I think so.
All right, so
Tim, does that make sense?
Sure.
So
Okay.
Tim will speak to it and answer any questions if there are any.
I think it makes sense for all the last three.
Yeah, I agree.
217, 18, and 19, if you could speak to those for us.
All right, 220, we've recommended already. And then Allison, you had something about the, 0.034.
Phil Stearns should be the liaison from FinCom, by the way, just on that one.
On 220?
On 220. And Tim will.
They're going to make a recommendation at the town meeting.
And Tim will speak to it?
Yeah.
Can the chair of the committee make the motion?
Sure.
Yeah, let's
Mike
have,
Toomey, hopefully.
let's have Mike
Yeah.
T to make the motion.
I'm sorry, this is on 220?
Yeah, 220 be Mike Toomey.
Mike Toomey.
And will, Allison, you or Jeff reach out to Mike and make sure he's fine with that?
Okay, yep.
And then there was a typo in there, right, on the tax rate impact?
Yeah, it can't be 0 per 1,000.
Yeah, what's the tax rate impact on 220? We have it in here. It's different. It's changed, though, because this is no longer a bonding issue. It's only a request of 75,000, so.
Yeah, but if you look at Article
It says
2-10,
0.0.
which is 75,000, it's 4 cents per thousand or $26.
4 cents.
Yeah.
That's a great question. I actually did not realize, this is, I believe, is a version 7 of the warrant.
Okay.
Version 6 had a different number in there. So I think now we're asking for $75,000. I think also there's been talk about changing it from a debt article, so we're not going to go out to bond $75,000. So in order to put what the tax impact is, I would need to know how you plan on funding this. If you say you're going to raise taxation, then that I can calculate that number. If you say you're going to use free cash, then the use of free cash will not have a tax impact because.
So let's talk, if we can talk about that. So after we make our free cash disbursements based on our new free cash policies, we'll have about $1 million or $1.7 million left. Is that right?
I believe so. I don't want to. We would still be at our 5%.
So
yeah.
It would be.
I can't.
To me, it would be a reasonable request, one-time expenditure of free cash on a one-time cost. that would save us from having to add to the tax rate. And, you know, like I said, free cash, if you're going to use it, should be used on one-time cost. This is a one-time cost to continue the planning for the town hall project. If you wanted to do it that way, then we can rewrite this tonight. We can rewrite this tax rate impact to reflect that.
Phil, do you know what your book says? Or your report says?
Our report,
They didn't vote yet.
had these numbers, so we took the numbers out.
Okay.
We said we'd make a recommendation at the meeting
Okay.
when we saw the numbers.
Phil, if you wouldn't mind, if you're going to speak some more, just come to the mic so everyone at home can hear you. That's okay.
We can show what the tax impact is.
No,
based on the $75,000 being raised through taxation. And then if for some reason the motion ends up saying that it's going to be from free cash, then we can maybe just correct it at town meeting and just say that similar to, I think we have some other articles that we said none, as it is anticipated that the funds will come from the certified free cash. So
Donna has a good point on this too.
Yeah, so we always leave the warrant articles broad on our funding sources, just so that we can have this discussion up until town meeting. So we have many articles in here where we have broad funding sources, and yet we still have identified a tax impact.
Right.
So we can put a tax impact as if it's going to be raised and appropriated, but if it is free cash in the motion, if anybody asks, we can explain that in fact that will mean there will be no increase effect on the tax rate.
Perfect. Yeah, my heart goes out to the finance director, everybody working on it, that our numbers, we're still evolving, so it makes it difficult.
All right, where are we on this one? Do we?
Already voted.
You already voted it.
We've already voted it,
Yep.
and we've got,
Who
Mike
decides the
Toomey's going to
funding-
make the motion.
Who decides the funding source?
Tim's going to speak to it in the funding source. Do we talk about it right now?
No, you can leave it, I'd leave it to.
We can leave it
town
till
meeting.
later.
We'll put the tax rate impact in here before we send this to the printers, and we'll have the
Which
discussion.
is 4 cents per thousand if it's 75,000.
Right.
Okay.
It's about 4 cents.
Yeah.
It's about 4 cents per thousand.
All right, 3-1, our sign by law. We
did not vote because it's still in discussion.
Still in discussion for the planning board.
The handout that has 3 pages like this is updated to reflect the summaries that were provided by Bill on the next 4 articles. The sign bylaw, the inclusionary housing bylaw, the wireless facilities bylaw, and the affordable housing trust bylaw.
Okay, so just look over your summaries, Bill, real quick.
The only question I had is that the one that was in our packet tonight has a yellow highlighted section, which is not related to temporary signage, it's related to permanent signage. Is that a change, Donna, or is that not supposed to be highlighted in yellow? I thought we were only changing the temporary language of the sign and not the permanent. This.
Yeah, so for a while, we've been talking about a comprehensive sign bylaw change.
Yes.
It does affect permanent and temporary signs. The part that's in yellow, which was changed, was from an earlier draft the planning board was considering as to whether you would limit the number of signs based on who the owner is, so that contiguously owned parcels could only have 1 sign, or are we going to allow more signs if you've got separate lots that just have the same owner? So what the planning board at some recent meeting decided is that if you've got 2 lots abutting one another, even though they have the same owner, they're going to let them have 2 signs.
If they have 3 lots, it's still 2 signs. If they're
Correct. That's the way this is currently written.
So our challenge tonight is they're not voting on this until tomorrow.
It's not final, right?
So it's not final, so I don't know how we can make a recommendation.
I think you had voted last time to make a recommendation.
At town meeting.
Town meeting,
on
yeah.
all 3 of the planning board bylaws.
I think we leave them that way. Yeah.
So do we have a meeting like 10 minutes before the meeting and vote?
Well, if they're not making their recommendation until the town meeting, we wouldn't be in a position
No,
to
they're
vote
making
on it.
their recommendation tomorrow.
Night. You
They're
do
gonna
have a meeting
finalize
on
tomorrow
April
night?
1st.
Right. We have a meeting before?
You have a meeting April 1st.
Okay, all right, fine.
So you could make
So
your.
we'll vote on that.
You could
Okay.
vote on that and then make the recommendation.
Right, so we'll do that. We'll leave
Anything else
it.
you guys want to talk about in the signs? Anything else? Is there anything that is a problem?
I think just the stuff we discussed last time, that kind of, Allison had a good point about what if you're selling your house and it's on the market for 3 months or 4 months, you've got a sign that's been there for 3 or 4 months, right? So that, I think, was in violation of the bylaw, right? Didn't we discuss that last time a little bit? Allison, do you remember that?
Yeah. We weren't really sure how it was going to play out.
Donna, how would you answer that one?
Yeah, the way it's written now, if the sign is there for more than 2 months, it's going to need to comply with the bylaw. It's going to need to get approval.
So they're not going to put except for real estate signage, it's not going to make that an exception?
No,
'Cause you
because
can't,
that's
right, you can't.
content-based.
Yes,
We did
content-based.
discuss
We
that.
talked
Right,
about
we
yes.
talked about the content-based, right?
All right. All right, so that's how it reads. If you want to put a sign up on your house, you got to get a permit.
If it's more than
It's more than 2 months.
Okay.
Sell your house quick.
That's really the only thing that I kind of saw, other than the content base, which has a big discussion.
I'll bring it
on
up to
what they-
Brian, and so they can talk about it tomorrow.
Okay.
All right, the next thing, so we're not going to do anything with that, correct?
No,
We're gonna-
you need to decide who's making the motion on
Yep.
that.
I think Brian, or I think somebody in the planning board.
Okay, so we'll.
All three of these will be, I'll talk to Brian about that.
Okay, so we'll pencil in Brian Stein on
Okay.
3 of these. You want to do that?
Yeah, and I'll talk to him
And
tomorrow.
Darcy Dale is the FinCom liaison on all 3 of these if the FinCom chooses to make a.
Okay. Anything else on this one?
Yeah, so we voted on this based on the article, on the appendices that we were provided at the time, and we're not made aware that these were still under discussion and going to be changed.
Well,
So obviously, we will want to.
We don't know that they will or won't change.
Right,
We
but
say
the
that they would
point
still have
is
the
that
public hearing is tomorrow
there's
night. We did-
uncertainty at this point that we didn't realize was there. So obviously, we reserve the right to make a change or at least explain our position at town meeting.
Okay. And Darcy would do that, I think she was the one for this article. Okay. And then 3-2 inclusionary housing bylaw, we'll put Brian down on that one as well for the motion.
Also Darcy.
Yeah, so the only thing different is my numbers are different than your numbers. So you had 145,000, but we had it as 162,200.
So,
Donna, have you reviewed these summaries? I'm sorry.
The summaries or the bylaws?
The summaries.
No.
She doesn't typically review the summaries.
No.
I think she typically would review those summaries going out in the morning.
I will put on the record again, I'm not a big fan of summaries.
Yes.
Because there's just too much things that go wrong.
Yeah. Well, no, it's just the sign one is pretty specific. I just want to make sure that you're okay with the summary before we send it out to the,
So, let me say, the sign bylaw summary, that one sentence, I did write that one.
no.
Oh,
it's
no,
not
I
that.
haven't seen those bigger
I
ones.
sent it to you last week.
The bigger one?
Yeah. And
These
but your only comment was you're
These
still
are the
working
new
on it.
summaries. So I just wanted to make sure that you saw the summaries.
Okay. Yeah, we'll need to change the summary for 3-1, because it's,
Well, yeah, it'll change if the bylaw changes. We don't know, these are drafts because they haven't voted on it yet.
yeah, but the problem is that the summaries are going to be in the warrant that's printed tomorrow.
Correct.
Yeah, so, I mean, Joe, you gotta
Which-
decide what you want to do with those.
I don't want to put in something that's going to be
Yeah, so-
erroneous. The previous one was, the article seeks to amend the sign bylaw to conform to no, that's not.
Yeah, that's it.
That's what Donna wrote.
That's what I wrote.
So she wrote a one-liner,
Yeah.
which doesn't really, but that wasn't the goal of our summary. The goal of our summary was to
Summarize it.
summarize, and that's just one line. But if we don't know.
Well,
what the-
something's better than nothing, I guess, right? Our option is, we really can't leave what's in here now if they haven't finalized and if it changes, correct?
Correct, if not, it goes to print tomorrow.
Right? And we don't want it to go to print like that, so I think we're back to the generalized statement.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
It's not my warrant, it's your warrant, but I think I'd just say the planning board hadn't made their decision before the warrant was published, so
We couldn't do a
no
summary.
summary is possible.
Right.
I agree with that.
Okay, the next one is, so we'll just, I think we can go back to Donna's summary, though, because it relates to...
What was done? Do you have it in front of you, Joe?
Yeah, it says the article seeks to amend the sign bylaw to conform to constitutional requirements.
Which it is, because you can't do content-based signage.
Right. I'm okay with that.
Okay.
And then Brian can
Inclusionary housing.
present, then Brian can present the summary in his presentation.
His presentation, yeah.
And we can make a recommendation at our meeting on the 1st.
Okay, so did we cover 3.2 yet?
So 3.2 is, I think the only discussion we had last time was the 65 versus 55 in terms of the,
Right.
we changed our
And now
senior
does
housing, so I'm not sure if you were part of that discussion, Donna.
I do recall, and I do recall I was supposed to check into it, and I confess I forgot.
Okay.
And I think it's 62, not
I think it's 62.
65.
62.
I did confirm that it is indeed the case that DHCD thinks that you can't have any age restriction at all
Oh,
in affordable housing units. So if you have senior housing and it's got an affordable unit on site, it will
Can be anybody.
be anybody.
So I think, again, did you write the original summary, the article seeks to amend the inclusionary housing bylaw to conform to the current DHCD guidance? That's a one sentencer.
Sounds like me.
I don't know if you've had an opportunity before this evening to read the other summary, so in that case, I would say that we just, again, leave it a one sentence.
Well, that's not the idea of the summary. The idea of the summary was to interpret a 6-page document. So you don't have to read the 6-page document. So we have to decide then there's no point of a summary. If you just put a one-liner in, you might as well not put the one-liner in. It's not a legal document,
It's not a legal document,
Right.
You're correct, but if you're looking to avoid confusion to the voters, again, you're talking about summarizing something that has not yet been approved by the planning board.
Two different things, right? Two different
The
things.
change.
Right. But we're not,
Yeah.
but this isn't changing to, I mean, there's not language you're not changing this, it just hasn't been voted on yet, right? They haven't proposed to change the language, right?
They can vote to change the language tomorrow. That's what the public hearing is
Right.
about.
Yeah, they can change it.
Yeah.
The only thing, though, is that for Phil, he had a different number, though. Phil had 145, and we had it at 162. So that's the only issue I have is with... Phil, do you know where you got your number from, the 145 per unit?
Yeah. A few weeks ago, we invited Patrick to come speak to these issues, and he said the original number was what we put in there, and they were revising
I
it.
got a different number from him, so
Okay.
I got it to 8. I thought they got...
We had a little discrepancy, too, and we asked him, and he said sometimes he rounds.
The 80% AMI currently is 81,100, so 2 times that would be 62,200. You have, or 162,000, you have 145, it's a difference of 17,000, so anyways, it's just, we need to be clear on that, so.
All right, so I think at least with 3.2, as in 3.1, we're either leaving the brief summary that it looks like Donna wrote, the article seeks to amend the inclusionary housing bylaw to conform the current DHCD guidance, and/or adding planning board at the time of printing of the warrant, still.
Yeah, you guys say something like that.
If it's okay with you, I'll add that sentence to both 3.1 and 3.2.
Yeah.
And then
And to
depending on-
3.3.
And to 3.3.
And to 3.3.
Yeah, I think that's,
So stick with the one sentence.
Stick with the one
summary.
sentence thing and then just
Actually,
add the-
return to one sentence,
Right.
and then add this planning board line about not having determined their fund.
final language. Okay, and sign
Because
bylaw.
even on the wireless, so the summary doesn't actually talk about the bylaw, so the bylaw could change. It just talks about the reason for the bylaw. It's not, doesn't affect The language of the bylaw isn't affected by
You're
the
saying on
summary.
3.2 or 3.3 or both?
3.3.
3.3, okay.
It's still, however the exact language is, it's still going to create a new, permitting process.
Right, there's no numbers or any.
Yeah, don't talk about what the process is,
details,
I just
yeah.
say it's going to create a new process. So there's nothing specific, and there's not a number, there's not a number of signs, there's not a time frame. The only thing that they didn't answer is that last part we could take out.
The following may go away?
Yeah, we take that away, because they haven't talked about that yet.
So what if we just strike that last sentence?
I'm not in favor of putting out anything that you haven't gotten the recommendation of your legal counsel with, and we're printing it tomorrow.
Could you look at that, Donna?
Yeah, I have read over Bill's summary on 3-3. I'm okay if you strike that last sentence. Okay. You can go with that. I know that the draft bylaw that you have on the back table here is very different from what I recommended the planning board vote on.
Gotcha.
So they'll see that tomorrow.
Noted. All right, and Brian Stein.
So this
Make
the
the
new
motion
summary on
again.
3.3 is okay, Donna?
Yeah, you can use that summary
Strike
so
it.
long as you
Strike it.
strike.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. 4-1, Affordable Housing Trust Bylaw. And summary, and we have a question mark for recommend.
So we got language on that now. That language is included tonight.
Yep.
And the summary doesn't really change, although
The point of this was to reduce the quorum to 3 out of 5.
Right.
like Most
Yeah.
boards, and not have the.
the only
have to be a
change in the
resident of
summary.
town and not the town
The only
manager.
summary is the town manager will be a non-voting participant of discussion. And will not count towards, so you have to change, they made can a will.
Okay.
So where it says town manager can be, it should be will be?
Be, yep.
Okay.
And I can speak to this one.
All right, so do you want to make the motion?
I'll
as
make the
well?
motion, yeah.
Okay. So Bill will make the motion and speak to it.
So we need to vote on it tonight.
And so everything's the same as last time, pretty much, except for the town manager.
It's the same, except that we made the town manager a non-voting member, a non-quorum member.
Okay. Anybody want to make a motion to?
Is the summary, Donna, are you okay with the summary? 'Cause-
Yes.
Okay.
I make a motion that the Board of Selectmen recommend favorable action on Article 4-1.
Wait a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. All right, 5-1, establish an OPEB trust. Did you have a chance to look at the summary, Donna, while you're up there? And then we've recommended already. Who wants to speak to it? Anybody in particular? We want FinCom to talk about this one, since it was kind of their baby.
Yeah.
Who was?
Phil, was that you?
Do you remember who was going to speak to that one, or make the motion, Phil?
It would be Dave Langer. And I'm sure he would be happy to speak to it.
Okay. Okay.
The summary looks fine.
Summary's good, okay.
And
Now
we've
back
removed
to-
6-1, right?
Well, you got to vote on that.
Take a vote.
I make a motion that we remove Article 6-1 from the warrant.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, so we strike 6-1. And then we call it a day.
We have to close the warrant.
We can do it that
Need a
fast?
vote to-
A vote to close the warrant.
Close the warrant, may I
Yeah.
ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
I see a change in this. Last year, we voted, or unless you had a meeting I didn't know about, we put the names of the people and how they voted. If it's a 5-0, it's not necessary. If it's a 4 and 1, I assume that means one person abstained, voted no, and if it's a 5-1-1, somebody didn't vote at all. And I just want to know why you did that, and I'd like to know who didn't vote for some articles. And I'm sure the town would like to know who voted against some articles. Did you have a meeting on it or something, or did I miss a meeting?
Nope. Oh, we didn't have a meeting.
No. I think
It's
we
not
just,
gone to the printer yet. I only saw 2, and I think the patent thing you said was not going to go on the warrant. Is that correct?
Which thing? The 6-1 is the patent thing's going to be on the
So
warrant.
why don't we review all the warrant articles, and we can, I record all the votes too.
Yeah.
2-1 was 5-0, 2-2 was 5-0, 2-3 was 4-1, Jeff Hubbard against. 2-4 was 4 aye and 1 abstention, Allison Jenkins. 2-5 was 5-0. 2-6 was 4-0.
5 was 5-0? 2-5, I
401.
401.
Oh, sorry. 4-0 and
That's
1.
Allison.
Allison was the abstention, yeah.
Jenkins, sorry. 2-6 was 4-0 and 1.
Same.
With Allison
Okay,
Jenkins
Allison, yeah.
abstaining. Same with 2-7.
Yeah.
2-8 was 3-1-1 with,
We voted 2 different votes, but one was unanimous and one was 3-1-1, but it was a
Right, so
Oh.
that one's a little more confusing, so.
Got 2 votes.
On
1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 was a unanimous in favor.
Right.
For project 4.
Allison was in favor of it, fully funded. 3 of us were in favor of it.
And I was an
One that
abstention.
And one
Jeff,
abstained.
Bill, and Scott were in favor of the $50,000.
Correct.
Allison was against it, and Sean abstained.
Oh, but see, Allison was in favor of the 197, so you can't say she was against it. That's not proper.
I voted against that motion.
No, but you voted in favor of the 197.
But I voted against that motion.
Right, but you want, it's the warrant. How'd you vote for the warrant? The warrant recommended 197.
We created 2 votes. One was for all the projects except the community house, which we voted 5-0.
Okay,
Right.
the warrant says 197. Allison did not recommend against the 197.
Right, how do you say she was against the 50?
I think the
Right?
warrant,
I'm trying
You're
to defend
changing
you.
the
No, we're-
warrant to
no, we're
say
not.
50.
No, we're not. I'm not changing the warrant to say 50.
So your vote, what you voted was to recommend favorable action on 2-8 Project 4, conditioned upon lowering the appropriation to 50,000.
Allison voted against that.
And Allison voted against that.
Sean abstained. Okay.
5-0, 5-0, 5-0. Wouldn't want to be a negative on that, but.
2-9 was everyone in favor?
no, I think it was 4-0 and Allison
Oh,
abstained.
no, you're right, it was a 4-0 and 1, Allison abstained.
2-10 was 5-0.
Yeah.
2-11 was 5-0.
Yeah.
2-12 was
That was a 3-1-1.
3, that was Sean, Bill, and Scott, affirmative, Jeff negative, and Allison abstained.
For stabilization fund, Allison abstained.
Right, otherwise it was 4-0.
And then same with 214,
15 and 16.
15 and 16,
And 17.
and 17. And then,
18 was 5-0.
yep, 50, 18, 19 was,
4-1 with Jeff in the nay.
right. 50 on
5-0 on
220.
Yep.
Uh,
And 4-1 was 5-0.
Right, and the other ones were all recommendation on town floor.
OPEB.
No.
Or, no, I'm talking about
4-1
3.
and 5-1 were 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Duke, for
Thanks, Duke.
reminding us.
Yep. All right, so
Now we need to close the
yeah,
warrant.
there's a motion made by Scott to close the warrant. I didn't get a second yet, I don't think.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous?
And we need to sign it.
We need to
Sign
sign
the
it.
signature page tonight, right?
Pages are in here. I'm going
Okay.
to be making a lot of changes to this tonight.
Thanks for coming out tonight, Jeff and Donna.
Marissa, thank you.
Thank you, Marissa. Thank you, Tim.
Oh, you're
Thank you,
staying for
Dave.
the,
Oh, yeah, we need the, right, she's going to stick around for the...
You can go.
Thank you
You're off
very
the-
much.
Thank you very much, Jeff, for coming tonight.
Thank you, Jeff.
Dolan, D-O-L-A-N.
All right.
We took care of both.
No.
1 and 2, right?
Yep.
Same time?
1 and 2,
I don't
we
think
knocked
so.
off at the same time there. Now we've just got to talk about our finance department reorg.
Who's going to make the motion on the floor to, that's what I'm confused by. Change it from 27 to 50. Who's going to make that motion? Because right now the warrant's going to say 197. That doesn't make sense to me because the motion isn't the warrant. The motion was here.
Jeff was going to make the motion to amend Project
Okay.
4.
So he's, okay,
Basically.
okay, gotcha. So Jeff-
According to the vote you guys took.
It's perfect to add it, but on that CPC article, the reason that they need to spend all that money is they're gonna be taking a chunk.
This is still on. The Sean's.
We're still live, but that's okay. Right, because they're taking over from the YMCA, right?
She's in there, children.
Right, so they could use the basement. Right.
So I just wanted to mention that.
Nobody said it.
That
No,
was,
that's a
we were
good
told
point.
it was a heating system upgrade is what we were told last week,
Yeah.
so thank you for bringing it up.
It was because of the children.
I think there's a whole laundry list of improvements other than, I think one was the basement water system. They're
Oh,
taking
the
over the child care
finance
program for the Y. There's a heating
finance.
system. There's a whole
Yeah, we did the road.
bunch of different things.
And this SRO is done, so it's just finance
Yeah.
department. Okay, cool.
All right, so we're going to move on now. We have a proposal for reorganization of staff in the finance department. You've got quite a document in your packets here
Kind of
tonight.
presented to you here tonight. I'll hit the high points for you. It's a two-page kind of explanation and then 2 pages of an org chart. But the high points here are that over the years, the operation of the finance department has taken on more and more and more different roles than what the core financial functions are. In reviewing the operation and the organization, doing interviews with folks in the department, doing interviews with folks who used to work in the department, having an outside consultant come in and make an assessment for us in a kind of a quick way, and having a couple of current vacancies in the department. I worked with Marissa to try to think of a way to more appropriately place duties and responsibilities where they belong. One of the things that we've, obviously I've asked for and we're seeking in the budget a .33 human resources director, but that still doesn't take care of all the things that we do as far as kind of managing our employees on a weekly basis. Payroll and benefits and a lot of the things that go along with it are nested in other departments, and we think that there's a more efficient way to handle that. I'm proposing that we create a full-time payroll benefits coordinator position that would be housed separately. Should we get the human resources, the shared human resources director, the person would help manage that person, help manage the payroll benefits coordinator. Ultimately, it would be under the town manager's office. And to do that, we're going to take the 2 open positions, 1 full-time position in the treasurer collector's office and 1 full-time position in the finance director's office, and make them half-time positions. Those positions would then focus largely on their core responsibilities in accounts payable and accounts receivable, respectively, and all the work associated with doing payroll, maintaining the benefits, keeping people informed of what the town can do for them as employees, et cetera, would be handled by the benefits and payroll benefits and hopefully the .3 human resources director. We did talk about this. I talked about this at length with Marissa. She's here to answer questions if you like. The second part of that too is also to recognize the amount of accounting work that goes into the financing department's second position, and recognize the current assistant accountant with a change to a assistant finance director position. A lot of this would probably take place after July 1st, but if I can get your support on this plan, and you don't have to say anything to me tonight, I know it took me a while to get this out to you, but if I can get your support for this plan and this direction, I'd like to be able to at least advertise the payroll benefits coordinator position sooner than later. And Marissa and I already have started working on the job descriptions for a number of these positions. Obviously, that will require a little bit more work with given the fact that we're going to have to replace the treasurer collector now as well. But we have some good depth, and we have some good people in good places. We just need to be using them appropriately. I think one of the things you'll read in the written report here is that, as an example, the assistant treasurer collector currently, who is certified to be an assistant treasurer and an assistant collector, or actually has her certification to be a treasurer collector through the state, spends somewhere between 60 and 70% of her time on employee payroll. That is, a misuse of a talented person. I'd rather have them doing treasurer collector function than doing payroll. And by taking that responsibility out of the office, that person can start to, focus on those functions instead. And we'd have somebody dedicated to overseeing payroll and benefits. They would also allow us to take the majority of benefits-related things for employees out of the finance director's office and allow that junior accountant's position to return to a part-time position where it would be focused on accounts payable and some light accounting work like it was doing when it was a part-time position in the past. Marcia, do you want to add anything to this? I think we...
Can you walk me through the structure, because I'm not seeing the, I do bear with, you're going from 9 FTEs to 9 FTEs?
So we have if you look at the third page is this proposed financial org chart, and currently what you have in the finance department is 8 FTEs.
Okay.
They're all full-time positions. For all intents and purposes, you'd remain at 8 FTEs, but you'd be spreading them over 9 people. 2 of those roles would become half-time positions, and then the others are all remaining as full-time
Okay,
positions.
so the accounts payable and the accounts receivable is 0.5, okay.
0.5.
And currently they're 1.
All right. And I included the Human Resources Director position in the flow chart because I'm an optimist and I'm really hopeful the town meeting is going to support it, as you and the Finance Commission already have. But I did put it in bold there that that's just proposed at this point. And the following page actually shows you the current structure of the Finance Department.
Gotcha, I understand it now. Okay.
So I'm happy to take questions. I'm happy to take questions over the next couple of weeks if you have them. I did vet this in addition to talking to the department managers. I also did vet the idea through the union, and they were receptive. So
the union was receptive, you said?
Yes.
What positions are currently vacant or?
There is the junior, for lack of a better term, accounts receivable position in the treasurer collector's office.
Okay.
And there is a full-time position that was just approved to be full-time in the fall in the finance director accounting office. That position, we did make an initial attempt right after town meeting to fill it. It did not result in a satisfactory candidate, and by then I had engaged the consultant to
figure out the structure.
Do an outside assessment of the department. No, he really didn't propose, and the report is available if you want to review it, but he really didn't propose an actual structure. He proposed things that we could do to make the organization more efficient.
Stuff, yeah.
And what I was looking for was to see if what I was seeing and what I've been told by other folks was matching up with what his assessment was, and by and large it did. He recommended some things that we won't do right away that we might look to do down the road. He recommended other things that I thought, particularly with centralizing human resource type functions, the things that I thought would make us better and quicker.
Now, so if this got approved, you would go out and find a full-time payroll coordinator, and then
advertise for 2 part-time.
And then do you see one person be able to do accounts payable and accounts receivable?
After a lot of discussion with both the treasurer collector and the finance director, the problem there is that we might lose checks and balances if you had the
Still the same person, right.
doing
Get two.
those functions. There,
By the auditors to have someone working, there should be a segregation of duties between the treasurer's office and the accounting office.
Okay.
Because one takes on the receipts, the other one makes the payments.
Right, so it's checks and
To have
balances.
the same person do both would probably not be ideal.
Okay. And the good.
Has a full-time position, so
Right.
had a part-time employee for 1 year only. So prior to that, we didn't really have anyone. And then we got the approval to do a full-time. The full-time position was to be the accounting assistant / benefits coordinator. That was the intention.
Yep.
Was to add the benefits coordinator piece into that position. But we've been holding off until we knew exactly what the restructuring was going to be. Just didn't feel like we should be hiring someone if we were going to be making changes in such a short period of time or in the near future.
So position related, not personal related. I agree that the finance departments need restructuring. I like that the human resources and the payroll benefits report up to the town manager. I don't know that treasurer collector, as I remember it or see in other departments, still need 2.5 FTEs. If the assistant treasurer collector, 50 to 70% of their job is payroll, and that's leaving that office, then I don't see that office needing to stay at that
level.
It's too highly staffed, to me, if you take that piece out. And then I don't see IT on this, but IT falls to finance today, correct?
That's correct.
So IT would need to show it up appropriately would be on the org chart. I think you need real definite roles and responsibilities. So you as finance director with this org chart, similar like to the police chief, would you be the person hiring out the individuals in your organization? So are you the hiring manager?
I would say that I would probably be the one presenting my final candidates to the town manager, but my understanding is that the town manager would be the one that has the final saying.
Okay. No, so I was reading the town manager's position as presented to the residents, and it appears as though you would be the hirer of those roles, and you would be the hirer of the finance director and the human resource director, but the hire for those roles, I think, falls to you.
Okay.
As I interpret it, but I think this is close. I think this is better, but I don't. I would see if the 50% of payroll came out or 70% of payroll came out of treasurer collector, then another half of FTE would come out of there, and I would see it falling under the assistant finance director and accounts payable, where I still think, I still don't know that the workload's more evenly distributed between employees, the way that this is. I think it's close, I think it's good, but I don't think it's tying out right.
What I would say to that is I think we have to rewrite job descriptions.
I would agree.
And see what the responsibilities are going to be for each position that it's going to be advertised. Okay. And I think that at that point in time, we should probably have this conversation again. It's hard for me to say yes or no, not knowing exactly what each position is going to be doing currently. Like, we have an idea of what, I know I had put a job description together for the accounting assistant / benefits coordinator. Obviously, all of those benefits, I would see that transition into the payroll benefits. I think we're going to we have a lot of movement happening at the treasurer's office right now, with the treasurer collector announcing her retirement, with having the administrative assistant position being open, with the idea of having payroll being moved out of that office. I think we really need to revisit and rewrite those job descriptions and see, what other functions is the assistant going to take on by when we take the payroll out of that.
What's the backfill on that?
So I think we really need to have detailed job descriptions and then have a conversation about it.
So, because I think we have a great opportunity, because there's no people filling those positions, what makes it much easier then to fill those positions and reorganize how you want it to be reorganized. So then what can we do to help you and Joe so that we can facilitate this so it moves sooner than later, and so then you can start advertising and filling the positions? No one wants to see either of you understaffed, which you currently are understaffed. So I know they're two moving targets, but what could we do to help you facilitate that, I guess?
I would say if you have any suggestions or if you have any ideas on how you would like the town to operate. I know that I always hear opinions from different people. I think the payroll benefits position was actually an idea that was already been thrown out there even before I started working here. I know I heard about that, within the first year that I was here, so that's really not new. Well, it's new, but it had been talked about. So if I would say, if you can provide us with any suggestions, did you think it would be helpful for the town and the operations, I'd be more than glad to have that conversation. I think that before we actually start advertising the positions, again, I go back to job descriptions. We really need to look in detail at what the roles and responsibilities are going to be for each position, because the last thing I want to see is to have, being unfair either way. So that would be my take on it. I don't know if Joe would like to add anything.
Okay. I can look in my town to see what job descriptions we would have and send them off to you, if that would help, from the HR director there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because sometimes I think even if you just see the bullets, you can steal the bullets and say, yeah, but I like it over here versus over here. Absolutely. But it gets your brain.
Right. Helps you.
Tracking.
And every town operates differently.
Absolutely,
you see, I've seen payroll in 3 different offices.
Yeah.
So it all depends, but it's always helpful to look and talk to other people and see how they're doing and whether they like the current structure or not. I was just at a conference last week, and because I knew this was already a plan, and I was talking with other people and say, okay, well, how do you handle, where's payroll in your town, and who does benefits and who does this? So it's always nice to have ideas and bounce it off other people.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I see this is all upside, Joe. I think you made an awesome recommendation, and Marissa, I'm glad you're behind this too. I think it shows an improved focus on HR, which has been something we've been talking about for years and years and years. And the privacy issues related to payroll and benefits, and how that would be organized and connected there, and reporting to the town manager for the size of our organization I think you've got a really good recommendation there. This whole idea about by moving, taking advantage of the 2 open positions, especially changing one that's just had chronic turnover, obviously is ripe for change. So I, for one, not too worried about if it's another 1/10 of a person going one place or another. I think your structure is just right. And in terms of, as you move forward with your rewriting the job descriptions, I'd also suggest relooking at the finance director or town accountant position, so it reflects this change in the payroll benefits.
And also something that I had brought up multiple times with Michael Lombardo, which is the balance of effort and time that between the finance role and the town accountant role, because the bulk of the vast majority of the time, Marissa's time is in closing the books and maintaining the hundreds of funds that we have. We publicly, what people see, or the FinCom looks to Marissa for, is we want her as a budget analyst and finance director, which is, we need that too. We need all these things, but can't be all things.
We actually demand quite a bit of her time
Right.
in that role, and we need to find a way to kind of alleviate that.
So I would suggest in that a revised description that you balance that so that the expectations are clear for both the Board of Selectmen as well as the FinCom, so that it doesn't, I know it's incredibly demanding on your time. You have multiple
I really
meetings at
appreciate
night.
that comment because I would love that.
Yeah, and I don't think that's appropriate for what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with Scott more on that. And we've had this discussion over the last couple of years with that demand of operations versus the budgeting, et cetera. It's a lot. So whatever we can do to leave that. And I think this new structure gives a little bit more room for upward motion for people. And we haven't had much of that before, so people kind of get stale in a position, and then, we get the turnover rate that we had, that one with like six people in 8 years or something like that. So that's a good amount of turnover that we shouldn't have, so. Always improving. Great job.
Thanks. So we'll pursue kind of completing the job descriptions and keep you informed of that. I look forward to input. I love stealing good ideas, so Reading's got a good operation, so if they have good job descriptions and we can steal from them, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, perfect.
I'm going to focus a little bit on the payroll benefits, because particularly with all the changes that's going to be happening in the Treasurer Collector's Office, I think it's important that we try to pivot to that, so that we can, also start the process of determining who our next Treasurer Collector is going to be, make sure we structure all that the right way as well. We need to have somebody to take over that payroll function sooner than later.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
By June 30th. So.
Any other discussion? Great. Thank you, Marissa, very much.
Thank you.
And sorry we kept you here so late for that.
Yeah, thanks.
Any new business you want to discuss?
We have to vote on the planning board articles next time.
Vote on the planning board articles next time.
The recommendation of.
Do we have any other carryover from tonight? I don't think so.
Nothing new.
Anybody wants to entertain a motion?
I move that the Board of Selectmen adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Board, please
Yeah, don't run away yet. We got to sign the warrant.
Signature pages of the warrant, and I'll be late trying to figure this out.
Hope you can read your writing.
Are we doing blue pen, black pen? Does it matter?
Try and do blue pen just to make sure, since we're gonna, it should be.
It's blue.
Blue.
Yeah, well, thank you.
It's not going to be copied colors.